Okay, and then NJ, would you like me to begin with roll call?
Yes, so before you do the roll call, I'm just gonna greet everyone and just make an official announcement about the meeting being recorded.
Thank you.
So again, thank you everyone for joining us today. My fellow commissioners, supervisor Sailor. I don't know if Supervisor Provenza is here. Sorry, I'm quickly glancing at the panelists and participants. Again, welcome to staff, consultant, and members of the public. So I am calling this meeting to order. As a reminder, this meeting is being recorded and happening online due to the current situation with COVID-19 and also in compliance with Government Code Section 5495(3)(E1) as amended by Assembly Bill 361. And Kristen, thank you for doing the roll call for us.
Thanks, NJ. All right, so we will start our roll call with Commission Member Reed.
Here.
Commissioner Daddle.
Here.
Commissioner Allman.
Here.
Commissioner Kim will not be in attendance today. And Commissioner Serena will not be in attendance today. And Commission Member White will not be in attendance today. So going next to Chair Mbondo.
Here.
Commissioner Austin.
Present.
Commissioner Alvarez.
Here.
Commissioner Bennett.
Here.
And Commissioner Britton.
Here.
And also the ex officio members, please.
We have Commissioner Morgan, or ex officio member Morgan.
Here.
And member Dulcich does not appear to be here.
Thank you, Kristen. So I went ahead and kind of like touch up on agenda item number 1. And the meeting again is officially in session now. Let's say, so I will ask please Commissioner Daddle to read the land acknowledgement for us. And this is attachment A for those following online. Thank you.
You're muted, Robin.
Thank you. We should take a moment to acknowledge the land on which we are gathered. For thousands of years, this land has been the home of the Putwin people. Today, there are 3 federally recognized Putwin tribes: Catchell Dihi Band of Wintoon Indians of the Calusa Indian Community, Quetzal Dihi Band of Wintoon Indians, and Yocha Dihi Wintoon Nation. The Putwin people have remained committed to the stewardship of this land over many centuries. It has been cherished and protected as elders have instructed the young through generations. We are honored and grateful to be here today on their traditional lands.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Daddle. Moving on to agenda item number 3, approval of the agenda. So do we approve the agenda as it is written?
I move approval as written.
And this was Commissioner
Reed.
Commissioner Reed, thank you. Do we have a second?
Commissioner Russell.
Commissioner Austin.
Second.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. So let's place it to a vote, please.
Commissioner Reed.
Aye.
Commissioner Daddle.
Aye.
Commissioner Allman.
Aye.
Commissioner Mbondo.
Aye.
Commissioner Austin.
Aye.
Commissioner Alvarez.
Aye.
Commissioner Bennett.
Aye.
And Commissioner Britton.
Aye.
Thank you. And I want to take advantage of this small break to welcome Supervisor Provenza. who is with us now. Yolo. So we're opening the floor to public comments. Members of the public, this is a time where you can make comments on any topic that is not already on the agenda, and you have about 3 minutes. If you do so, please remember to briefly introduce yourself, and you now have the floor. Do we have any public comments? We have one. So it's someone joining us by phone. So I will let you, Kristen, I'll let you bring that person over. Once again, please state your name and affiliation. And you have the floor. You have about 3 minutes. Thank you again for joining us.
Hello, this is Scott Stewart, and I just wanted to say how much I appreciate all the work that you commissioners are putting in on the Climate Action Commission, and I just wanted not to be a mystery on the phone. So I'll be brief and just say hello, and I'll be eager to listen in. Thank you.
Scott, I happen to know you personally. Thank you very much again for joining us. And for full disclosure, Scott is one of the founding members of the Yolo County Emergency Coalition. So again, we're very happy to have you join us today. Thank you, Scott. Do we have any other public comments? Okay.
No, do not see any others.
Okay, so let's look at agenda item number 5. So this is attachment B. And so it's about the minutes from last month meeting, which was on May 23rd. And so basically I'm asking my fellow commissioners if you have any objection to the minutes as they were written, any recommendations that we make any change. Commissioner Ullman.
Yeah, this pertains to item 9, member reports. I think that lost a little bit of in translation. I did contact Matt Earhart, the director of Yolo Solano Air Quality Management District, regarding leak detections in the county's gas wells. And this was in response to a resident's inquiry to me after the resident had read an article in the LA Times about oil wells surrounding Bakersfield. And Matt was extremely responsive. He indicated to me that the wells that we have here in Yolo County are indeed gas wells. And notice that it says in the minutes that they're oil wells, they're actually gas wells. And that the Yolo Solano Air Quality Management District conducts leak inspections and is in compliance with California Air Resources Board regulations when leaks are detected, and so they are repaired. He did note that the state does monitor abandoned wells. Abandoned wells are also an issue around the state, and he felt that perhaps the state agency, GEM, which is Geologic Energy Management, I believe, he felt could do a better job in monitoring abandoned wells, but that didn't reflect on the Yolo Solano Air District's efforts on behalf of either capped or actively producing gas wells. So if we could change the minutes to reflect that, I would appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Mark. And Kristen, I trust that you took note, and I know that this meeting is recorded, so you'll be able to go back as needed.
Yes, thanks for the correction, Mark. We can make the change to the gas to oil, from oil to gas, and then add that additional, make sure that the additional content.
I'd be happy to forward Matt's reply to me if you'd like. That would be helpful.
Great, thank you, Mark.
Thank you both. Any additional feedback on the minutes, suggestions? Okay, I don't see any reactions. Will someone please make a motion to approve the minutes with the amended suggestion?
I'll move to approve
adoption.
minutes.
Here we go. Go, Robin.
I'll move to approve these minutes as amended with Mark's comments.
Thank you,
Second.
Commissioner Dattel, and Commissioner Reid just seconded the motion. Do we have any public comments on that? Don't remember if I'm supposed to ask. But I don't see any at this time. I think that we're ready to put it to a vote, Kristen. Thank you.
Great. Commissioner Reed,
I'm sorry.
Commissioner, so to take roll call.
Oh, we're
Commissioner
taking a
Reed?
vote.
Yeah.
Sorry, I blanked out there for a second. Aye.
Commissioner Daddle,
Aye.
Commissioner Ullman,
Aye.
Chair Mbondo,
Aye.
Commissioner Austin,
Aye.
Commissioner Alvarez,
Aye.
Commissioner Bennett,
Aye.
and Commissioner Britton.
Aye.
Okay, so the motion passes and we are now. Okay, I got lost here. Okay, so now we're moving on to agenda item number 6, staff announcements and reports. Kristen, you have the floor. Kristen and Taro, thank you.
Thanks, NJ. So I will try to be brief because as you'll see on the agenda, we have 4 meaty items to come after this. But I just wanted to quickly call attention to attachment C. So a special shout out to Commissioner Reed for flagging this session, this forum to me, but there's a California Climate Energy Forum is put on by CivicWell, is happening this September in San Diego. And we submitted a proposal to highlight the work of the commission and tell the story that just take a step back. The theme of the forum this year is climate action, accelerating climate action and climate justice. And so we submitted a proposal to highlight the work that led to the creation of the emergency declaration and the Climate Action Commission, and then looking ahead to the work of our climate action and adaptation plan. And so our proposal was accepted, which is exciting. And so I included the brief overview, the 150-word description that we propose for this conference. And we're lucky to be joined by NJ, Adelita, and Supervisor Provenza to talk about the work, NJ, the work of the commission. Adelita will be talking a little bit about the work that went into the advocacy that led to the creation of the commission, the emergency declaration, and then Supervisor Provenza will be able to provide more of the county's perspective on work to date. And so wanted to share this with you all. Would love to hear if anybody has any feedback or highlight anything that we're missing from the proposal, but more to come. And we're excited to be able to share the great work that we're doing here.
Kristen, thank you for this brief presentation. And again, thanking Commissioner Reed for sharing this opportunity with the commission, and also shout out to Kristen because there was a very short turnaround between the moment we received information and the deadline to submit a proposal. And I think, Kristen, that you did a fantastic job writing it up so quickly. Do we have any feedback for Kristen on that topic? Or questions? Okay, so it doesn't seem so. So I'm asking if it's okay, Kristen. I'm asking members of the public if they have any comment on what they just heard. Okay, I don't see any reactions. Kristen, is there anything else that the staff would like to share with us in your announcements?
No other staff reports at this time, unless Taro, I'm missing anything.
Only perhaps to thank you, Kristen, and good afternoon, commissioners. Only just to maybe comment that our new CAO, Gerardo Pineda, started last week, and we're very excited to have him. And so that's just a slight change in the upper county executive position there. So his first meeting before the board will be tomorrow. So I don't have any other news.
Okay, thank you, Taro, for sharing. So I believe that this concludes our our time on agenda item number 6, end of staff announcements and reports. So the next 3 agenda items are action items, so they will require, I'm guessing, a robust discussion, conversation, and then also decision making. So agenda item number 7 is a review and approval of early action grant strategy. Please refer to attachments D and E. And Petrea, you have the floor. Thank you again for being with us today.
Thank you very much, Chair, members of the commission. It's wonderful to be here tonight with you again. This is exciting stuff, starting to talk about the money to actually implement the actions you have already approved. Before I get started with an overview, I wanted to note an important correction to the staff report. The recommended action, it says approve in the RE line at the top, approve the 22-25 Climate Early Action Grant Strategy. It is actually what is under recommended action is what is before you today as an action, which is to recommend approval of the 2022-2025 Climate Early Action Grant Strategy to the Yolo County Board of Supervisors. So I just want to start off with making it clear what actions before you tonight, and that is to recommend approval to the Yolo County Board of Supervisors. As an overview, you know, this is nearing the end of a long process to identify early actions. This is the final piece to that process, which is to identify grant opportunities that match the early actions that the commission has recommended to the Board of Supervisors, and which the Board of Supervisors has either adopted or will consider approving. And obviously what this is going to do is leverage the limited amount of resources that the Board of Supervisors has set aside from the American Rescue Plan and allow the county to do much more than it could otherwise if it funded all of the projects itself. There is a scope to this early action grant strategy. First of all, it covers 3 years. I know that is a little bit longer than the time that it will take to complete the climate adaptation action and adaptation plan, but nevertheless, we think that's a good time frame for pursuing grants. So we're recommending a 3-year grant strategy. And number 2, the scope is only for 5 of the 7 early actions, and I wanted to explain why briefly. So essentially, we went through all 7 actions that the commission has recommended to the Board of Supervisors, and 2 of them, in particular, the 100%, the Yolo agricultural retrofit program and the 100% renewable electricity counts are not included in this strategy because there is no grant funding has been identified for those early actions. We are expecting that the county will use general fund or other funds available to them for payment of the 100% renewable electricity counts, which was recommended by the commission and approved by the Board of Supervisors. And for the Yolo agricultural equipment retrofit program, that is a program that is funded from a state appropriation already that goes directly from the state to the Yolo Solano Air Quality Management District. So the action that is going to be before the Board of Supervisors for that one is not a grant, but rather whether to allocate additional funds from the American Rescue Plan to further increase the resources available in Yolo County. So I just wanted to clarify up front that this grant strategy applies to only 5 of the 7 early actions. So if you were wondering why you didn't see those other 2 in the report, that is why. Brief update on where we are with approval. 6 of the 7 have been approved by the Board of Supervisors. And the 7th one, I believe, is going to also go in July along with the grant strategy, and that is the agricultural retrofit program. There were some additional details that needed to be worked out with the Yolo Solano Air Quality Management District. So the board will be reviewing approval of that one at the July meeting. So I know you have a big agenda in front of you, and I know you've had a chance to read the early action grant strategy. As you know, I'm going to just briefly provide an overview and then answer any questions that you have about the grants that we've matched up with specific priorities. We're really hoping today that if there are grants we missed, or you think there's a better fit than one that we chose, that you let us know, or if you think there's other opportunities that we should research. This is a living document. So while the Board of Supervisors will be asked to approve it in July, It is absolutely the prerogative of Taro and Kristen to recommend changes to it as funding opportunities change or as projects evolve. So just keep that in mind, that it's definitely a living document. The way it's set up right now is that every single one of the 5 early actions that is included has an overview, which is a brief description of the project, which is obviously based on the longer early action project description that the commission approved. And then separately, it has a strategy paragraph, which essentially details how we recommend as staff that the county should pursue grant funds. And so for each one of those, we have both of those descriptions followed by grants that we believe the county should apply for by year, so by fiscal year. So we'll have grants in 22-23, in 23-24, and in 24-25. As you'll see, we don't necessarily have it all 3 years for every project. That's because in some cases, we think there's a really good one right in the first fiscal year, and we don't see any need unless we're unsuccessful with that particular grant opportunity to apply for any other grants. And the last thing I'll say is I know I got an email today from Commission Member White about a mobility program that could potentially be a fit for the ZEV master plan. I took a look at it and it looks like it would be good from my quick review of it. It looked like it would be a good fit for potentially implementing a plan once it's adopted, because a lot of the grants that were provided were for actual implementation of rideshare programs and other things like that. But that is the kind of input we're looking for. The more we know about not only grants that could fund the actions, but grants that could fund implementation of the actions, the better off we'll be when we finish some of these plans and we're ready to actually start building out the projects. So that's the last thing I'll say. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you have about the grant strategy. And if the commission members want me to go through each one individually, I'm happy to do that too, but I just want to be respectful of your time today.
Victoria, thank you for sharing this overview with us. And I will leave it to you to call on the commissioners as they're raising their hands, if it's okay. So you are leading this discussion. Thank you.
Of course. So I saw Commission Member Detel first.
Yes, thank you very much. This is really exciting. Could you just say a little bit about your method for identifying the grants? You know, like a couple of the key sources, you know, things we might want to look at, that kind of thing, how you would go about identifying the appropriate grants for this mix of projects.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and we have a more detailed document that we've shared with Kristen that is a spreadsheet of all of the grants that we not only recommended in the grant strategy, but also that we rejected for various reasons. So as a consulting firm, we have for over a decade tracked grants that are of interest to local governments in a variety of areas, including climate action. So some of it comes from our own knowledge of grants that exist. With the case of climate action, though, we found that the funding is coming so fast and furiously through the state stimulus and from the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act that we do two things. One is we actually read the state budget so that we can identify where they're appropriating funds. Then second, we call the state agency that's receiving the funds and we ask them where that funding is going in case it's not on their website. And then third, we will research the grants on the agency's website to determine, you know, which ones you know, to learn more about each individual grant. But often the information is not public. It is something that you have to actually call the agency to receive at this point. The same thing is true with the federal grants. There are some handbooks out now for the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. We have both looked at the original federal language as well as looked at those handbooks to try and figure out where all of the money is flowing. And then we will try to contact grant managers. And then the last and final thing that we've done is that we've actually subcontracted as a firm with both a state lobbyist and a federal lobbyist, because we are so nervous at this point that we are going to miss something that we want to double check with people who have their, you know, ears to the ground in Sacramento and DC that we haven't missed anything. That said, we absolutely could have missed grant opportunities. So there are some central, like the state just recently published a website that consolidates all of its grants, But again, like I said, some grants are so new that they're not in that website. So this was both, effort to use existing aggregated sources of grants, but also required a lot of, on the ground phone calls to people. And I'm looking at Jen here to nod because she's the one who made all the on the ground phone calls to all the people. So
I can confirm the many phone calls.
yeah. So does that answer your question, or is there a second part to that?
No, that's very helpful, Petrea. And I'm just thinking ahead to other kinds of grants that might be good for outreach and education, for example, which might come from a sort of different pool from the sort of energy, transportation, natural resources side of things. But thank you. No, that's great.
Yeah, I would suggest that once you, are further along with a climate action and adaptation plan, I would suggest a similar effort where you're matching up the actions in that plan to, because you probably will have more outreach or other types of projects that you'll be interested in funding. Next, I think, was Commission Member Britton.
Yeah, great. Thanks. This is very clear. Nice job with the writing and all that. A couple of specific questions that are in line with what you just said, so I could be brief. One was in the carbon farming part, which I think was page 2 of the, page, 2 is the introduction part of that. I remember reading about, we were talking about this earlier as we were discussing them, a federal, make sure I get the name right, because I have it written down here, the Conservation Reserve Program from the USDA.
Yes.
Has a lot of money that directly is offered to farmers who are participating in the project. It could really help our numbers quite a bit. And it seems to me that the county here could facilitate introductions or smooth, anyway, it could be part of the grant pursuit to get that money flowing into the county, whether it's directly into county coffers or into farmers in the county. Is there any sort of way of doing that in the
So Jess, so you know that you were heard the first time around because you were the commission member who added this to the early action project description. So we made sure to review that grant program, and unless we're mistaken, and Jen, I'm going to look to you to add if I misspeak, but unless we're mistaken, it's primarily funding the acquisition of easements and the habitat restoration that occurs on that, which can sequester carbon. But in this particular case, they were really focused on actually conserving the agricultural land and not just teaching the climate-friendly practices or implementing the climate-friendly practices. So we didn't think it was a good fit for this strategy in this project. Jen, I'm looking to you to see if I misspoke. That's what I remember from reading it. So because the early action didn't include acquisition of easements, and that's not what the Center for Land-Based Learning is currently proposing to do. They're proposing to develop model farm plans and then actually help some growers implement those farm plans, not to actually acquire conservation easements on those lands.
Because one of the major forces, or one of the major emphases in that program is hedgerows, which is, I think, a good part of farm practices. And I think the Center for Land-Based Learning is all over that. So it seems like using that there's a good coordination there available, and hedgerows are small easements, right? It's not taking entire acreage out of production or anything. It seems to me like there's still a place for that. I'm curious, is it too late to include that, or is that what all that?
So it wouldn't be to apply for a grant for it. The one place where I thought it could fit in was to have the Center for Land-Based Learning reach out to growers that already have conservation easements and ask them if they're interested in applying, having a carbon farm plan done on their property. Like they would be like one of the first people you would go to in Yolo County, would be the ones that are in the Conservation Reserve Program already. And if that kind of, but I think that's where I thought the two programs could intersect, is that we could communicate back to the Center for Land-Based Learning that because those growers have already expressed an interest in these practices and potentially also have money for it because they're a part of the Conservation Reserve Program, that they might be an excellent candidate for a carbon farm plan. And so, Kristen, if it's okay with you, I think what I would suggest doing is that's when you're executing the scope of work for with the Center for Land-Based Learning, to make sure that that's included in their scope, that they would reach out to growers that are in the program and try to work with
It seems like the bully pulpit of the county and the Center for Land-Based Learning together could also expand that to include growers who are not yet signed up with a program, and thus improve our sort of growth toward the goals completely. So I think a little outreach could be useful, but maybe it doesn't fit exactly here. I'm happy to go offline with it. This is probably a longer conversation than we should take today.
No, I think, well, just to conclude here, I think for the early action, I think what we just described makes a lot of sense, which is to have the Center for Land-Based Learning reach out to growers that are already in the program. For the climate action and adaptation plan, you absolutely could have a discussion about increasing the number of growers who are acquiring easements through that program.
It just seems to me like the money's already there. It's flowing from the federal coffers. We can be early with it too. So why not? Sooner is better for everything that we can do, right?
Yeah. So that would be another early action. So Kristen, I'll leave that to you. Like what I'm hearing right now, Commission Member Britton, is like it's not currently envisioned in this early action, but if you wanted to pursue another early action, acquiring easements would be one. So
we should discuss that as a commission, but that wasn't what I was suggesting today.
Okay.
A couple of other suggestions, specific ones. There was a couple of pages down from there, a date for the Carbon Farming Partnership of reaching out to the California Department of Food and Agriculture Healthy Soils Program, due date rolling 24 to 25. That seems like it could be earlier because they are actually already giving grants. It seems, why are we waiting to apply until 24 on a program that's currently running? Could we advance that in time?
So the reason is because the Center for Land-Based Learning, they just received the funds to do the model carbon farm plan. So the early action envisions model carbon farm plans first, and then applying for the funds to implement them in the second 2 years. So they have to develop them in the first year.
Okay, and then the electrification retrofit, I had a question about the in the overall description. It says something, and this is something I've talked offline with Taro about, that there's going to be aimed for where was it? Maybe I'm in the wrong page. But for unincorporated areas. And so I was hoping that we could also, because there's so many homes in incorporated areas, whether we could also coordinate with the cities in the county to do more that we by including residential homes in incorporated areas as well, just to expand the scope of this early action.
So I know, and I'm going to look again to Taro and Kristen on this one because we've had extensive conversations internally about the early actions in particular, focusing only on the unincorporated area because that is the area that the county can control. And that while we can encourage and share information, and I think, Kristen, you're participating in some collaboratives, since the Board of Supervisors does not have authority over the jurisdictions, their role is primarily to encourage and lead, but there's not an ability to actually implement a program in those areas. But I'll leave it up to you, Kristen, to fill in the gap there.
Yeah, so Kristen, you can check the email thread between me and Taro on that. I think there is more room to be had there than what you just said. I think optimistically we could, especially for cities like Davis who are enthused, just a little staff time to coordinate between county and city efforts. And since if we're providing encouragement and technical assistance, the county can certainly do that for people in the cities. It's not a mandate. It's not telling them how to build, but we can certainly help them build and work with the climate planning of the municipalities And I think that would expand the scope of the project. So I would hope that that can be included in the implementation at least.
Ken, I want to thank you for that comment. I didn't mean to cut you, Petrea. And I'm not, I don't know, of course, what Taro and you talked about, but I'm jumping in just to mention that, and also as a reminder to anyone joining us later and listening to this meeting. So several cities do have a climate action plan that they're working on, and the comment that you made is absolutely on target. But what I'm very curious about is the intersection between what the cities have already decided to implement, because the way you talked about the county enforcing a certain action or program, but I want to cross-reference that with what has already been decided at the city level in terms of, when it comes to, how can I say that, the expense. So we're working with a certain budget. And so we're also looking at how much it's going to cost to cover some of those action items. So to summarize what I just said, I'm looking also just at, as I said, just, I'm losing my words here. I'm sorry, but just being aware of whatever expense will be covered by the cities and the county, and seeing how then the county comes in the play in complement of that.
Thanks,
Okay.
Sanjay. And I can,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah,
I,
please. Yeah, go.
just to jump in a little bit, I think definitely hear that, Ken. And I think on sort of the two sides of the project, one is, do we, expanding the actual outreach directly to incorporated residents. And I think on that side, the early action project description that we've approved and move forward specifically focuses on unincorporated, and that was the language in there. But that being said, I think to your point about coordination with staff at the municipalities is something that we can definitely do. And that, ensuring that we're aligning language and sharing out what we are doing and finding opportunities for alignment, that's something that can be done with very little additional budget. It's, discussion with those staff. So I think just making that distinction, and hopefully that's clear and somewhat aligns with what you've been talking about.
Yes, it does. That's a good answer. And I just think, everything we do to help the ball roll was great. So thank you.
And
thank you both.
Thank you again, Ken and Kristen. Petra, I'll turn it over to you again to continue the conversation with Commissioner Bennett, Reed, and Alvarez. Again, I'm saying this out loud for accountability for the staff. Would you please help us every time we're discussing an agenda item and an action item where some cities in the county have an integral part, please, if you can remind us to or include a little update regarding what's happening at the city level, if it's at all possible. I feel like that will inform our conversations moving forward. And I'm hoping I'm not adding too much to your workload already. Okay, thank you, Petrea, you have the floor.
Great. Commission Member Bennett.
Hi. I also have a comment about the carbon farming and the Healthy Soils program, and it sounds like probably you and the Center for Land-Based Learning are on top of this, but California Healthy Soils program has two parts. There's the incentive program, which is for money for individual farmers to implement, but there's the demonstration program, which I believe has a $250,000 limit. That is more for, it seems like it's more for the kind of thing of developing a group developing a carbon plan for others to use. There's some requirements for it. There's two different parts. There's requirements to do like monitoring and cost benefit analysis, but I think the things that we want to do anyway. So I don't know if you had considered the demonstration program, and it might also be good to distinguish whichever you're going after, the incentive program or the demonstration.
I agree. I think we should separate them out and put them both in there for consideration based on what I know of what because we both want to, the Center for Land-Based Learning and the Resource Conservation District both want to potentially continue the planning process or add to their demonstration work. and B, apply for implementation of practices. So I think that's entirely consistent with this early action. So that's a great point, and we'll make sure to make that change if it's okay with Kristen and Taro. Seeing a nod from Kristen. Okay. Any other questions, Commissioner Member Bennett?
No, that's it.
Okay, and then Commissioner Member Reed.
Thank you. I have a couple of comments on the comments that have been made already. One is that several of the cities are in the process of creating their climate action plans. So I think that there is room for shared information and the kind of cross collaboration that our chair is interested in. And that there are some of us who come from actually in the cities. Actually, we have very few unincorporated members represented or areas represented among our membership. So I think we can help the staff sort of update on the status to the extent that we know it. And so I can say, being a participant in the West Sacramento process, that it's sort of coming along. They're doing some outreach, and we expect to see some drafts later in the summer or perhaps early fall. That being said, the programs that given the timing, synchronization of the timing, the county is capable of coming up with models that we can encourage the cities, in the interest of not reinventing the wheel, to take a look at and consider, so that we can try to integrate and align what each other is doing and share resources to make it happen and reach the residents and the businesses and the organizations that would be implementing the actions. Insofar as the regional collaboration was mentioned, I'm monitoring the regional, what's called the RCC program, as it's kind of sort of being rolled out in a way in our region. It's a little choppy right now. So I'm just going to say that probably it's not a source of funding that we're going to be able to access and apply on a broader scale, at least in this first round, because it is directed at under-resourced communities, and the eligibility revolves around what census tract and how the data from those census tracts relate to the poverty level and average annual income. And so the parsing of what issues are going to be addressed and what communities are going to be served through that process, I think it's going to be something that we'll want to keep an eye on and understand how it's rolling out, but nothing that we want to sort of weigh in on right now, other than making recommendations of what communities that they within Yolo County, which is what the Yolo County people that are sitting in on those conversations are doing, drawing attention to, because there's several counties involved in our region. So trying to get focus on the under-resourced communities of Yolo within that process is sort of our current mission. So we'll see how that plays out, and I'm keeping Kristen informed on whatever I hear, learn, or think, and the notes that come along in that process. My question specifically about the report that was presented today, it revolves around the agriculture equipment retrofit and the farmer program. And I've just been looking at the allocations. I think there's always been to Yolo Solano for distribution to our ag community relative to the allocations to other regions. And I'm wondering if there's any advantage or benefit to kind of weighing in on how those allocations are made, or what's coming our way from the state allocation, just because when you look at the air quality management districts that the allocations are made to, a lot of them are relatively even, and then some of them are overwhelmingly, obviously, Central Valley, San Joaquin. But I mean, at like levels and levels above what is being allocated elsewhere. And I wondered if there's any validity to us not benefiting from a fair share, or any benefit to be realized by weighing in on that allocation process.
So I'm gonna let, I think Kristen weigh in just because I know she's had more conversations with the air districts than I have, but I will say as someone who has worked with local governments to influence grant guidelines, I think this is where you're going, is if there's an issue that could be addressed at the state agency level, you could recommend changes to those guidelines to increase the allocation for YOLO based on policy grounds, right? Which I have done for other local governments before, especially in a county like ours that directs growth to cities. There's a good policy argument to be made. But I have not looked into that personally. So Kristen, I'm looking to you to, see if you've had any discussions along those lines with the air district.
Yeah, that's a really great point, and thanks for bringing that up, Commissioner Reed. In terms of the overall state formula, that is not something that I understand fully, so I don't know that I can speak to that. But the YOLO Solano divide, I know that the greater amount that goes to Solano is I believe a property tax difference between the two counties where the money is allocated based on an additional tax in Solano County. I don't know, Taro, or if anybody else knows better and can fill that in, but that was my understanding on that piece of it.
I don't know if we need to spend time on it now. It's just maybe something to take a look at and see if we can have a conversation with Yolo.
Kristen, I'll put it on the list for our internal staff meeting to discuss more.
Great, thank you.
Anything else, Commission Member Reed?
No, that's it. Thank you very much.
Commission Member Alvarez.
Yes, thank you. Just commenting on Commissioner's written suggestion about the Conservation Reserve Program. I have some qualitative information about how farmers in California respond to the program. It's right now, it's not very popular in California. The reason is because their payments are done by acres. And so since we mostly grow specialty crops here in California, high value specialty crops, it's a set aside program where the land has to be has to stop, growing a crop. And so it's not financially feasible to, in other words, the farmers would lose a lot of money from setting land aside. So it's not very used in California. It's mostly used in the Midwest where they have larger acres of low value or lower value crops. However, the lack of water and the SGMA legislation may change that because some farmers are going to have to fallow land anyway. So it might represent an opportunity for California farmers to apply to CRP. However, the application needs to come from the landowner. And then, so my question for the strategy has to do with who's going to be the applicant. Is the county going to be writing the proposals and sending the proposals?
So that's a great question. And Kristen and Taro, you can smack me later if I get this one wrong and commit you to things you don't want to commit to. But the whole purpose behind the grant strategy is the county is taking ownership over this strategy, and they are going to evaluate the opportunity at least 6 months prior to the application deadline. And that means even if the application hasn't been released, it's going to be due in 6 months because usually these things are due on an annual basis. And they are going to assess whether or not to apply. So it doesn't mean that they're going to apply for every single grant in this strategy, but they will go through the effort to assess whether or not the county should apply, whether one of the partners that they're working with should apply. Like in the case of a planning grant for the Center for Land-Based Learning, the Center for Land-Based Learning has indicated a willingness to potentially help the county apply for grants. So, but they will go through that process of deciding either whether the county themselves will apply, whether they can work with a partner to support a partner's application, or whether it doesn't make sense for the county to apply for variety of reasons that could come up at the time, whether it's a lack of matching funds or an assessment of competitiveness. So, but it is, the county's in a leadership role, and from my perspective as a consultant, the commission can hold the county accountable for making those decisions. They can't hold them accountable for applying for every grant, but for seriously evaluating whether they should apply. Taro and Kristen, are you gonna? Okay, got a thumbs up.
There will be no smacking.
Good. Shoo. Okay. Any other questions? Did I answer all your questions, Commission Member Alvarez?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Chairman Bondo.
Yes, thank you. I had my hand raised because I wanted to make sure I don't forget to share some thoughts. And before we move forward with this conversation, just want to let you all know that we're slightly over the time that was allocated for this topic. The time allocated is suggestive, so we can definitely go over, but let's just keep that in mind as we are moving forward. So Commissioner Alvarez, thank you so much for the question you asked, because that was the one on my mind as well. And Petra, I was wondering if you wouldn't mind clarifying, if you can, if the actual grant writing, if you already know if that will be done by county staff or by county and consultant, or by county consultant and, you know, potential partners. I don't know if you have an answer for us at this time.
It's, I'm gonna start the answer and then turn it over to Kristen. It is in our contract to apply for one grant. And the one coming up the fastest is the Caltrans Sustainability Communities Grant for the ZEV Master Plan. So we have been talking to Kristen about actively helping Kristen apply for that grant. And then I know that Kristen and Taro are in discussions about their budget. And so I doubt they can make any commitments about future years, but I'll leave that to Kristen and Taro too.
Once again, Petra, I think you said it well there, and we are looking at the budget, and so we are looking at exactly. So we don't have an answer for that right now, but we, as soon as we have a better picture going forward, we'll share exactly.
Thank you for clarifying. And then second comment or piece of feedback has to do with what Commissioner Reid shared. So it was in regard to the county, you know, encouraging the cities to adopt a certain model, something that will be complementary to the work we're doing. And I was, this is just for an kind of like internal work for the staff, if it's okay. I was wondering if you will please check with the appropriate party, I'm guessing maybe the county's lawyer, when it comes to how commissioners can engage with you on that topic and not break the Brown Act. So what I'm referring to is that this is something that we are talking about in public meetings. Several of us on this commission live in different cities that are in the county. The reality on the ground is that we talk about, as part of the work of this commission, coordinating efforts at the county level, also at the city level. So the broader question is, how can commissioner help the staff with that goal? And still, you know, do it in a way that is not breaking the Brown Act. So you don't need to address that now. I'm just sharing that so that you please check as needed, and then maybe send us an email, or, and you know, we can update the public at a later time, but just letting us know in very clear language how we can, you know, participate in that process. It could also be that commissioners at the next meeting share updates and leads with the staff. The thing that I want to add that is in relation to that, just a reminder for members of the public as well, that our county staff is in regular contact communication with other county staff and city staff on, you know, including regarding the work of this commission. So I'm aware that you have conversations regarding climate action plan with other city staff and other county staff. So the comment that I made earlier about when appropriate, adding an update of what is being discussed or done when it comes to CAP with other cities within the county and sharing updates with this commission was in reference to that. The fact that you might already have access to that information, and just a public invitation to please update this commission, you know, when you think it's appropriate, as it might, you know, help the work that we do moving forward. That's all I had to share. And Commissioner Britton, you're next. And after you, if we don't have any additional comments, then there's Commissioner Morgan. We will turn this conversation to public comments too.
I will make this fast. Thank you, that's good. And this is really just an extra idea in response to Commissioner Alvarez's question and Petra's good response, which is maybe there is some extra assistance to be had in this very room with grant writing or with identifying opportunities. and perhaps commissioners themselves could help in the process of writing grants. I'm sure several of us have had some experience. I, for one, would be willing to do it. Maybe a working group for that purpose from people on this commission who are willing and able to help could expedite things for the county staff and consultants. Just an idea, and we can pick it up if it seems like a good one later on.
Commissioner Member Morgan.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to the conversation that I think the grant strategy is good, but I would recommend adding a section on how you're actually going to go about applying for grants. And it wouldn't be in this iteration because I know it's going to be a dynamic document, and sounds like there's still at the county level, staff level, need to figure out what the plan is. But I just know from my own experience, I've written a number of grants for the tribe, also trying to work on collaborative ones. And if you don't have dedicated staff identified, it doesn't happen. And so whether that's existing staff, whether it's a need to put in for a new dedicated grants writer, which might be worth something considering if, I think a lot of these early actions are going to be very much grant dependent. I think probably any adaptation, planning, implementation that comes out of the CAP will probably involve grant funding. So that might be something worth looking into for the long term. But just to highlight in the memo itself, if we're going to talk about a comprehensive grant strategy for the next couple of years, put something in there about, what are your key partners or who's going to be responsible for identifying or moderating, collaborating, that kind of thing.
I couldn't agree more. And I would add to that also grant management and project management, because if you were successful after writing it, you have more work to do it. So I know Kristen and Tara are having those conversations internally, but it's really nice to hear you reiterate it from your own personal experience. So thanks for bringing that up, Commissioner Morgan.
Yeah, and definitely with the management as well, like that is a whole other project. Yeah, it'll take a lot more energy than just identifying and submitting.
Yeah, agreed. It's a true commitment.
And I'll just note as well, we're working on developing scopes of work and budgets for these projects, identifying a lot of those roles. And so really appreciate that comment. It's super important.
Thank you, Commissioner Morgan and Kristen, for what you just shared. I'm seconding what was just said, and also just a personal thought. I think that being able to singling out that need, the grant writing aspect of the work that's being done, I can see how it could be very useful for the county as a whole in the long term. I don't know if there is already a designated grant writer, but I'm throwing it out there given that we have two supervisors with us today. Supervisor Provenza, you have the floor.
There we go. Thank you. I know I probably don't have to say this, but this is for Kristen and Taro. And in terms of what you need to make this process successful, please make sure you let Don and I know in this process, because we want to stand behind whatever is needed, if possible, to make this process successful.
Thank you, Supervisor.
So much.
Yeah.
So Petrea, do you have any additional, and thank you, Supervisor Provenza, first for reaffirming your firm support to the work of this commission and to the staff. And Petrea was wondering if you are expecting additional feedback for commissioners, or if we are ready to take public comments on this item.
Yeah, I think public comment, and just a reminder to the commission that the action before you is to recommend approval of the grant strategy to the board of supervisors.
Okay, so if it's okay, and Taro, correct me if I'm doing things out of order, but I would like to take public comment, and then after that we'll make motions and we'll put the agenda item to vote. Okay, I'm saying yeses. Members of the public, you have the floor. I'm inviting Christine Shoemaker to share her feedback. Please, Christine, I know several of us know you, but for members of the public who will be listening to this meeting a bit later, if you wouldn't mind stating your name and just affiliation, that would be helpful. And you have about 3 minutes. Thank you again for joining us.
Thank you, NJ. So my name is Christine Kimball Shoemaker. I'm a resident of Woodland, a retired plant molecular biologist, and a long-term climate activist. So I'm actually going to ask a question, and I realize that as a member of the public, you can't necessarily answer, but, and it relates to the 100% renewable electricity. And I know that's not what's actually on the docket, but what I want to know is, did you get the actual amount of what that's going to cost? Because in the Board of Supervisors recommendation, it was just an estimate, and it wasn't very large. But I ask because at the Board of Supervisors meeting, they talked about wanting to be able to measure things, how much greenhouse gas reductions we got. Well, something that's very easily measurable and measurable now is the greenhouse gas reduction we would get from moving our accounts over to 100% renewable. And it would make a difference whether we pulled that lever in July or we pulled that lever in October as to what the overall impact is on our greenhouse gas reduction. So that's my one question. And I also want to follow up really briefly on, I sent an email to Kristen Wraithwall and a few others about a bill called AB 2649 from Christina Garcia. And it hasn't gotten through yet. It's called Natural Carbon Sequestration and Resilience Act of 2022. And it's just something I think you need to keep abreast of. It's a very complicated bill, has 8 or 10 different main things, but there could be in there things that relate to funding, et cetera. Hasn't passed yet, but it's just something to keep on the horizon. Again, thank you, and thank you for all the work. It's really quite impressive. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christine, for your feedback and question. I jumped in, Petria, because I'm leaving up to you whether or not you would like to provide an answer to Christine's question. As I'm thinking the same question might be on the mind of several commissioners.
I know Kristen has the answer, so I'm going to give it over to her.
Yeah, thank you for that question, Christine. And in terms of the cost of the 100% renewable, I'll share this because I know that this is something commissioners are interested to hear as well. We just got an updated estimate from Valley Clean Energy, and it is more than the previous estimate that we had. It comes out to about $37,000 per year. We're working on getting department by department estimates of how that breaks down, but work in progress on figuring all of that out, but I'll leave it there.
Thank you.
Appreciate your answer. Thank you, Christine, and thank you, Kristen. Members of the public, any additional comments or feedback? You have the floor. Yeah, I don't see any public comments, so will someone make a motion to approve all these early action projects?
This is
Do
Mark.
we recommend that it be, yeah, excuse me, Commissioner Ullman?
I made the motion.
Would you mind stating the motion just for public record? You make the motion that
the commission approve the recommendation of staff to endorse the funding proposal as stated.
Thank you, Commissioner Ullman. Do we have someone seconding that motion?
Just as a clarification, if I think it's important to emphasize that it's recommend approval of the 2022-25 Climate Early Action Grant Strategy to the Yolo County Board of Supervisors. Just to,
that's fine.
Okay.
Thank you. As it is written in in the attachment D.
Commissioner Reed seconds.
Okay, Commissioner Reed second the motion. And Kristen, we're ready to put it to a vote.
Great. Commissioner Reed?
Aye.
Commissioner Daddle?
Aye.
Commissioner Ullman?
Aye.
Chair Mbondo?
Aye.
Commissioner Austin?
Aye.
Commissioner Alvarez?
Aye.
Commissioner Bennett?
Aye.
And Commissioner Britton?
Aye.
So this motion passes unanimously. I thank you all again for your input on this topic. So we are now moving on to agenda item number 8. Review and approve Yolo Agricultural Retrofits Early Action Project eligibility criteria. Please refer to attachment F. Kristen, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you. So I will, you have all seen the staff report for this item, but I'll walk through it quickly. And I know that this was a dense and long staff report. So there are 3 recommended actions that were included in the staff report. One was changing historically underserved to socially disadvantaged farmers and ranchers and or priority populations in the project description for this. And I'll go into the detail of why that recommended action. The second was approving the addition of outreach specifically to socially disadvantaged farmers and ranchers in the project description. And then the final action item would be approving the addition of language stating that all farmers are eligible to apply for this funding, regardless of whether they meet any or all of the priority criteria. So starting with the first item, changing historically underserved to socially disadvantaged farmers and ranchers. So going back to when this project first came before the commission, we had a long discussion about historically underserved. That language was added to the project description, and at the time, the Air District was present in the meeting and said they didn't use that description or that definition, that we would need to come up with one. And so after doing a fair amount of research, and shout out to Jen for pulling a lot of information from all of the great grant research that Kinsera is doing about what are all of the different possible definitions that we might be able to use for historically underserved. And one of the things that came up as a really good option, and rather than using or making our own definition for historically underserved, socially disadvantaged farmers and ranchers and or priority populations is language that is used in existing California grants. And so in particular, I referenced the SWEEP program in the application or in the staff report. And so jumping down to what this actually is defined as, so this is specifically socially disadvantaged farmers and ranchers. And it is important to say, I think, and or is how it is used in the grants, and I'll explain why. But it is any individual or who belongs to a group whose members have experienced racial, ethnic, or gender prejudice because of their identity, regardless of individual qualities. And the SDFR definition currently includes people who are African American, American Indian, Alaska Native, Hispanic, Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander, in addition to other groups who might be experiencing prejudice. The additional of priority populations is a term used by the California Air Resources Board, specifically includes disadvantaged communities, low-income communities, and low-income individuals. And so the reason that I think this is a strong option for historically underserved as a replacement for historically underserved, one, it's something that exists. It is in current grant applications. And in terms of sort of our alternatives, we had a good conversation back at, I believe it was the April meeting, about whether we could use the USDA definition for socially disadvantaged farmers and ranchers as part of this grant application. And so jumping down to the legal considerations, the USDA definition of socially disadvantaged farmers and ranchers, I think it's important to note that it is currently being litigated. And the sort of main issue that has come up in that litigation is that the only individuals who were able to apply to the program were folks who met the racial criteria of USDA. And so that is the main sort of piece that is being challenged, is that a farmer who did not meet one of those criteria was not eligible to apply. And so I think the CDFA definition of socially disadvantaged includes additional groups, and also the priority populations includes farmers and ranchers who might be low income or from a disadvantaged community. And so that is sort of the background to why we are recommending that definition be replaced. I think the other two important changes to the project description would be approving outreach to socially disadvantaged farmers and ranchers, because just simply saying that they're eligible does not mean that they know that this program exists or have the technical assistance needed to actually apply for a retrofit a rebate. So I think that's a critical addition. And then additionally, given the criteria and the lawsuit of the USDA grant criteria, adding language stating that all farmers are eligible to apply, particularly we have 3 additional eligibility criteria in our current project description, in addition to what we have been calling historically underserved. And so want to acknowledge that all farmers are eligible to apply, that this is one of the 4 criteria to hopefully address some of those concerns. And so it's not without risk due to these lawsuits, but hopefully sort of given the CDFA definitions and all of the additional changes that we're making, hopefully that this is a good way forward. But I will leave it at that for now. Would love to hear any thoughts or feedback that you have before we move forward.
Okay, I want to thank, the staff and you, the consultant, of course, for all the thinking that went into the current iteration, and the mindfulness also around the language. And one thing that especially is encouraging to me is how much more inclusive the proposal ends up being. Personally, I don't have any additional feedback in terms of change that will be needed. I think that this is a great improvement compared to the proposal we saw last time. And again, I want to thank all the commissioners, and I think it was Commissioner Reed who might have also called that out, like the possible issue of the language. So yeah, that's all I have to share. Commissioner Reed, you have the floor.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it probably was Commissioner Kim, who stays on top of these things, who noted the differences in the definitions. But given that, and given the landscape of applying for grants, it seems to me we want the greatest flexibility to have the people within Yolo County to whom we know or we understand among us, we want these funds to flow, to be eligible to apply for them. And so I know that there are other guidelines for grant applications that sort of do an either or thing. You're either this or you're that, or you're this or you're that, and then they make a citation to whatever the definition said. I know actually that the regional collaboration program guidelines take that route as well. So I didn't know whether there's any possibility that, and I have confidence that the staff is going to, I think this issue is going to reoccur as we go forward and find grants for various things that we want to do. Every law is going to define the eligibility in a different way with a different set of words. And what we want is the maximum flexibility to make sure that Yolo County is eligible. So whatever flexibility you can build into our own guidelines and narratives to give you the flexibility that you need to apply for the funds that are going to advance the action, I think is the direction that you want to go. And I'm very confident in the staff to be able to kind of make those decisions and apply the guidelines as needed. That's it.
Thank you so much, Suzanne. Kristen, I'll give you the floor, but Suzanne, I want to make sure that I did not miss on any thing that you just shared. So if it's okay, I want to ask you if you have also a specific request in addition to the feedback that you provided, just so we make sure we didn't miss on.
I didn't have a question. I think they're doing great in getting these things together, et cetera. But I just know from my experience the difficulty you're going to have chasing down definitions and eligibility. I can't even I'm trying to do some other work. I can't even find out what communities are within which census tract and get any kind of overlay that'll tell me so that I can sort out the demographics. So it's a tough, eligibility stuff. So, give yourself as much room as you need to be legal, but also have the flexibility to apply for the grants that apply.
To that effect, I want to thank you for pointing out the possible intersection when it comes to looking at the eligibility criteria of other institutions that are more prominent and how they're able to cover the demographic that needs those grants the most. and also stay within the legality of, the process and the language. Kristen, you have the floor.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I think hopefully this gives us the flexibility to, exactly as you said, NJ, still address and are the goals of the commission and the Board of Supervisors in terms of how we frame this and ensuring that we are targeting the populations that we want to be targeting and centering equity in our work while also fitting within the guidelines that we have to fit within. And so appreciate all of these comments. And I would love to hear any other feedback or questions that folks had.
So I'm giving you a few more seconds if you guys in your thoughts, if you like to add a comment. So Kristen, I don't see any additional comment from the commissioners, so I'm asking members of the public if you like to react to what you just heard before we move to approve the change of language and the additional criteria.
Do not see any public comment.
So there is no public comment on that. Will someone please make a motion to approve the Yolo Agricultural Retrofits Early Action Project eligibility criteria as presented?
I would like to move to approve as stated in points 1, 2, and 3 of the staff report, that we change the language as described there because it is very clear.
Okay, so that was Commissioner Britton, thank you, who is seconding this motion.
Commissioner Bennett, second.
Thank you very much. Kristen, I think we are ready to vote on it.
Thank you. Commissioner Reed.
Aye.
Commissioner Daddle.
Aye.
Commissioner Allman.
Aye.
Chair Mbondo.
Aye.
Commission Member Austin.
Aye.
Commissioner Alvarez.
Aye.
Commissioner Bennett.
Aye.
And Commissioner Britton.
Aye.
Thank you.
So, thank you all. The motion passes unanimously to the account of the people who are present. For the record, no, I don't think we need to do it. I was going to mention that we have a couple of commissioners not with us today. But that was said early on. Thank you all again. So now we are going to discuss agenda item number 9. So review and approve the climate, the CCAP scope of work outline, and please refer to attachment G, H, and I, and Michael McCormick. We are all ears. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Chair, Commissioners, and staff and public. So great to be here to present the revised scope of work for the Climate Action and Adaptation Plan. You'll find this on page 52 of your binder. Kristen, if you're able to pull up the presentation, that would be fantastic. And apologies, I am one of the many people that have recently gotten COVID, so if I have to take a break to cough or otherwise, I will I'll do that, but I'll be drinking water in the meantime. Okay, so we had some wonderful feedback from the commission at the last commission meeting, and we're able to loop back and make some pretty significant revisions to the scope of work and additions to the scope of work to respond to your comments that hopefully responds adequately to your work, but also increases the flexibility of the scope of work for the consultants that are that will be applying for the project. So you want to go to the next slide? So when we first step into this, the scope of work that was included in your packet, one of the things you'll notice is the introduction to Yolo County has been significantly expanded to include a more detailed context, history of the county, some of which you've heard. And the county does have a long history of working on climate action and adaptation. And it's important for the consultants that are reviewing the RFP to understand that. And so we do point them to the website, but we also can contextualize that for the proposal proponents themselves. And we also talk about the existing framework, where we would like the consultants to focus their time, particularly on the more recent products that have come out, like the sustainability plan. And we talk about underlying values in the foundation for the climate action adaptation plan that folks should be thinking about as they're developing their scope of work to respond to the request for proposals. We also specifically call out partners and lead roles to make sure that the consultants that are providing their proposals are doing it in a way that responds to our organizational structure in the county. So in the next slide, we talk a little bit about the various different tasks. We'll walk through each of these separately here in the presentation. And so why don't we jump right into the next slide, which is the general overall updates across the various different scope task items. But you know what? Let me go back one right there. We're on the right slide. That's perfect. Talking about how we've consolidated and streamlined some of these tasks, giving them each a unique focus so that the consultant knows who's in the lead role, who is going to be managing engagement on it, who's connecting to the technical side of it. So all these different tasks have those different roles and responsibilities laid out. And we also took the Commission's recommendation to combine the vulnerability assessment and the adaptation and resiliency strategies into a single task, really helping to consolidate that task item and bring those issues together. Made a number of other edits we'll talk about in a minute. So if we go to the next slide, some of the overall updates to the project include, or the scope of work include, prioritizing the need for creativity and innovation. We're in a really unique space in Yolo County and having this carbon neutrality goal by 2030, carbon negative by 2030. It's a really robust goal that's going to require a lot of out-of-the-box thinking. And that out-of-the-box thinking is something that we want to put into this RFP right up front, because many consultants have a standardized climate action adaptation planning template that they put forward to most clients. And we've been pretty clear throughout the scope of work that that is not what we're looking for in Yolo County. So really prioritizing that need for creativity, specifying inclusion, the inclusion of various partners, including the Resource Conservation District, as an important partner in the development of the Climate Action and Adaptation Plan, emphasizing the importance of the net negative goal. Again, highlighting that this is a significant goal that's going to require a different approach than most consultants are used to in climate action plans. And then adding some introductory comments to the scoping section to clarify that CEQA is not meant to drive the content of the climate action plan. CEQA is, in many instances in California, is the primary driver behind climate action planning. Section 15183.5B of the CEQA guidelines allows for permit streamlining on projects that are consistent with a climate action plan that has gone through this CEQA process. Well, in Yolo County, we have strong urban growth boundaries. We don't have significant development occurring in the unincorporated county. So permit streamlining for projects is actually not nearly as valuable as if we were in an urban context. So we do add some language in there to balance both the California dynamic of most climate action plans having CEQA with the desire for it not to be a CEQA focus. And we do provide an option for those consultants that feel like CEQA is an important part of this narrative to submit a component of their scope that addresses that. But again, it's certainly not the priority. So task 4, heading over to the vulnerability assessment and adaptation resilience strategies, we included some streamlined wording to eliminate all those various prescriptive categories you may remember from the last scope of work, while still ensuring that our priority topics in the county are identified. And then task 5, we've actually re-narrated this a little bit. Previously, it was a funding options analysis. And instead, what we really want from the consultant is a funding roadmap. How do we get these things funded and financed to get them done get them moving quickly. And, we're so used to seeing a laundry list of measures with potential funding sources attached to them that don't really have any meaning in reality. We really want a roadmap to successful funding of these initiatives. And so lastly, on an update to the timeline, we're looking at an RFP release in August with the various administrative processes associated with the circulation and consideration of proposals, having a contract tentatively approved in the October timeframe, and a kickoff in November. And mid to end of last year, important times for that climate action adaptation plan coming back to us in draft and final. There's a lot of moving parts throughout that schedule. We're asking the consultant to provide a schedule based on their team's desire to see certain things move at certain times. But we also have an expanded schedule internally that's very much a working draft, just like everything else, until we get some more concrete understanding of what the proposal scopes look like. We'll refine the schedule based on those proposals and the consideration of the actual tasks and the potential optional tasks that might come forward in those proposals. So that concludes my presentation. Happy to take any questions, clarifications, and walk through anything that you may want to dig into further.
Thank you very much, Michael. Before you take on questions, I would like once again to thank you so much for taking the lead on this and for being with us today with what you're dealing with. And I'm sure I speak for all of us in wishing you a smooth and speedy recovery. Commissioner Reid, you have the floor.
Thank you. Yes, please feel better, Michael. I'm sorry you've gotten COVID. It seems to be everybody's going to have it at some point in time, which is unfortunate. You guys have done great work. I think it's a challenge. It's so easy to take RFPs off the shelf and a template and sort of crank them out on these topics because they've been around for a long time. And I think you guys have come up with something that is creative and innovative, and I really appreciate that approach. My first comment is a general, or my first question is a general one, and then I have some specific comments on the scope of work itself. Perhaps you could tell us what role you would expect the commission to play in reviewing proposals and selecting the consultant.
Yeah, and I think I'm going to punt this over to Kristen to respond to that question.
Thanks, just coming off of mute, and apologies to Michael for the glitches with my Adobe during your presentation viewing. But that's a really great question, and I think something that we need to think through the details of. We don't have a clear plan for it, but definitely would like commission input. So I don't know, Tara, if you have any additional thoughts, but we just haven't finalized a plan yet.
Yeah, to the extent that we haven't done that, I think that one of the things that is on the table is perhaps, like in the previous comment earlier in the meeting, perhaps a subcommittee or a subgroup of the commission to help evaluate these might be something that we want to consider. So I think we have options.
Okay, thank you. So on page 1 of the scope of work, at the bottom of the page begins the discussion of the climate emergency resolution that was adopted. It's really important to those of us who were the advocates for the adoption of this resolution that the equity and just transition element of that resolution be introduced early into the scope of work. It doesn't appear otherwise until the bottom of page 2. And I think that that's really too late for our applicants to understand that this is a parallel priority, that in our climate change action, that we are also seeking a just transition and equitable implementation of a plan that will uplift those who have experienced disproportionate impacts in the past and who are disadvantaged with respect to the opportunities that are presented. So perhaps transferring some of the language and including the title of the resolution, which references inclusive, to that paragraph. I'm not going to wordsmith for you right now, but that's the overall comment. And the next comment I had was on page 4, no, page 3. I had some specific ones on the little Roman numerals, whatever you call little Roman numeral, lowercase Roman numerals, I don't know what you call them. That are some wordsmithing, because I don't totally understand what it is or as it's written. So in the first one, I'm gonna need to turn the light on here so I can read what I've got here. That the list of partners, potential partners, also include businesses and organizations. And I think the words "and other county communities" are just too vague to be helpful. So that, because you start with county communities, and once you say including, it doesn't eliminate any other partner that you might seek out. So that was my recommendation there. I don't, in number 2, center equity and elements of a just transition in all CAAP processes and outcomes. It just sounds like you're going to take some and you're going to leave some on the table. And I would just say, just equity and just transition, and take out elements of, so it doesn't look like you're picking and choosing. In number 5, I was confused by the word creativity. If you've appropriately addressed equity in the foregoing, then I think you need to substitute creativity. I mean, in the foregoing, you adequately address creativity, and so I would add equity instead of creativity in that line. In number 6, this is I haven't got the exact words for you, but I didn't. You might consider including some word that that notes that while it's going to be ambitious, we still think it's achievable. So that as we select actions going forward, we are mindful of what we can accomplish and what we can get done, and not just putting pie in the sky goals and objectives into our plan. Number 7, again, sorry, I'm an editor. I would just wordsmith here, create a CAP that I would say reflects the unique role the county plays in the region, and not just acknowledges it, but really represents it. So that would be my recommendation there. And then on page 4, with respect to the community engagement and equity strategy, I have a question about there is an inclusion and diversity work group already in place in Yolo County. And I'm not sure of their focus. I know that some of it was internal regarding the diversity of employment and the inclusion, the cross coordination of all the employees, but I think it also addressed the county's relationship to the public with respect. And so I know they have meetings. I know they have had a report. I don't know if they're still active, but I just think rather than reinvent the wheel, perhaps at least checking in with them as there's a more direct effort focus around the climate action plan would be appropriate. And then finally, let's see, under community, in the second to last sentence, there's a reference to small business owners, but I think we should be talking about small and large business and commercial building owners, because the commercial buildings in particular are can be a great greenhouse gas emissions, and dealing with the landlords of those businesses and finding out what can be done to improve the efficiency of their buildings and their incorporation of electrification and other energy efficiency items, and would be important, an important aspect of our outreach. And that is all the comments that I have. Thank you.
Commissioner Reid, that was very thorough. Thank you so much. Really appreciate your editor hat when you're providing feedback. I'm jumping in, not to cut in front of Commissioner Britton and Bennett, but before you answer, I was wondering if Commissioner Bennett will clarify why the suggestion to change the word creativity in favor of equity when it comes to the lowercase numeral number 5. On page 3.
I've never associated health. It just seems to be out of sync. That's all. It didn't fit with me in terms of what we're really trying to. When I do strategies, a lot of times there are guiding principles and values. I think it's already articulated that one of our guiding principles is creativity and innovation. And I don't think we can say equity often enough. So I just, that, and so, and when I look at holistic resilience, to me in and of itself, that represents a reflection of creativity and how we go about evaluating social determinants of health and incorporating that value system into our plan.
Thank you for clarifying. So for members of the public, that section of the item reads, promote health, creativity, and holistic resilience in every step of the process. So staff, would you please react to the feedback you just received and also answer the question that was asked? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think all of these changes are perfectly acceptable. Thank you for the copy editing approach, Commissioner Reid, and for your comments and responses. Kristen or Taro, any other comments on that?
I guess my one comment to your question about the county's inclusion and diversity working group, it's not a group that I am very familiar with. My understanding was that it was mostly focused on internal county hiring practices, but I don't know if Taro, if you have any additional insight you could share.
No, it's, yeah, I do, because I am in the working group, and it is internal mostly and beyond even the hiring, but the relationship within county staff as a whole and bringing in the concept. I think that there is, of course, obviously the possibility that we would expand out, but I do believe that at this stage, we're just thinking internally for now. Which doesn't mean that we couldn't expand. And I don't think it's a bad idea, frankly, that as the plan is being developed, the check-in, I think, is what Commissioner Reid, you were mentioning. It wouldn't be a bad idea, and I agree with that. I think that would be a good idea to run it by the group and say, hey, what do you guys think? Is this aligning with some of the values that at least we're trying to promote internally? I think that would be actually quite valuable to the group as well, to see an external application of some of the things that we're talking about internally. So I don't have an objection with that.
Taro, as a follow-up, because you also made a comment to what Commissioner Reid said earlier, you mentioned the creation of a subcommittee to evaluate, aspect of this proposal. So I just wanted you to please clarify just first that when you said subcommittee, because there is a difference in definition when we say subcommittee and when we say working group, because a working group can imply commissioners, but and also members of the public in the scope of the work of this commission. And when we use the word subcommittee, we're talking of a group only made of commissioners. So I was wondering if, just for the sake of public record, you will just clarify if what you mean by a group that evaluates those aspects of the proposal, if you mean commissioners only, or if you mean a group that is a little bit broader when it comes to the members in it.
I was thinking commissioners only.
Okay.
but again, I would like to have some internal conversations to make sure that that's okay, and these are contracts that are going to be held by the county and so on and so forth. So but my thought is commissioners only. I mean, this is work, the way I see it, that this commission is putting out. And I think that it would be wonderful to have a subgroup of the commission evaluate.
Thank you. I appreciate your clarification. Before we give the floor to Commissioner Britton, Michael, I was wondering if you wanted to react to what you heard this far, if you have clarifying questions for Commissioner Reid or for any of us.
No, this is very clear. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Commissioner Britton.
Yeah, great. I wanted to start by thanking you for the tremendous job you did here. It's a really impressive document as it sits. And you guys did really great work. Clear. I look for typos, none. It's lucid. It's great. Really nice job. There probably were some, but I missed them. Anyway, I'm going to go up to about 30,000 feet of elevation here and ask a broad question about whether we have in designing what the outcomes globally want to be, have really thought about what in the literature is called the system boundary of the county. That when we're getting into the nuts and bolts of carbon counting, there are various ways to define the inputs and outputs of the system, and in our case, the county. And for instance, a specific example would be that if we are counting the carbon costs of construction in the county, we could consider just the energy it takes to build something, right? The diesel of moving the stuff in and putting it together and all that. Or we could additionally include the life cycle cost of all the materials that go into the building. And that's a bigger system boundary, but one where the county's decisions make a big impact to the carbon overall footprint of the county's activities. And I looked for it and I didn't see any guidance in this scope of work as to what we are thinking about. And I think something of that sort should be in front of the perspective or the people who are going to bid on the proposals so that they know what they're getting into. The current documents, I believe, have a reasonably narrow system boundary of just county activities, and which is fine. I think that's understandable and clear and easier to measure. The other, I think, requires more assumptions, more effort, but is more, how do you say it, more complete in its understanding of what the actual climate impacts of the county work are. So I guess if I was clear enough, I will stop there. And if you understood my question, I can elaborate more if you didn't. Thank you.
No, that was very clear. And this is focused on a production-based analysis versus a consumption-based analysis, which means those emissions which occur within the geographic boundary of the jurisdiction is the primary focus. You're right, we didn't really add that clarity in here. It's the standard of practice in California to look at production-based and not consumption. But there are plenty of examples of climate action plans occurring all around the world that look at consumption analyses, which is the life cycle cost of development, of production, of creating goods and services, of moving products, of air travel. So I think you're right. Perhaps an introductory clarification that it is more of the production model makes a lot more sense. There's also a different way to frame it, which is scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions. And that is the more traditional way to talk about the production model. So scope 1 emissions are those that you have complete control over. So that would be, for example, county buildings. Scope 1 emissions mean you can have complete control, complete decision-making authority. You can do what you want to do on those. Scope 2 emissions are more community emissions. So things that you can influence through policy, through programs and initiatives and funding and incentives. And scope 3 emissions fall into that latter category of having a lot less control over. Oftentimes they're based on individual behavior decisions, but they might be able to be influenced. For example, car purchases or air travel decisions, things like that. So we oftentimes frame things that around those 3 different scopes with a focus on scope 1 and 2. and scope 3 falling into a much more ambiguous territory for local governments to try to manage. And many of those scope 3 emissions are somewhat managed through state and federal actions too. So we can anticipate the proposals to come forward to really focus on the geographic boundary of the county, focus on the production side of things, because that's the assumption in California, but we can provide some clarity around that. I think the last point around this, I really enjoy this conversation because I think ultimately the industry is going to look to consumption-based models as the best models out there. But right now, you have to use a lot of proxy data, meaning data that's not grounded in the reality of the community in order to come to a conclusion about what should or could be done. And we really want to nail down what's exactly the value of the work that's happening in the county, and that's best done through that production model. There is some value in adding context for the consumption side of things, so the life cycle analysis side of things. And there's a wonderful calculator hosted by UC Berkeley called the Cool California Calculator that gives you a really great general understanding of what that consumption model may look like. So what I would say is it's a relatively short lift to add that as a dynamic into the climate action adaptation plan. And I think staff and the supporting consultant team here could work with the consultant to add that at very low cost, and it just provides some additional rich context for what it looks like from the consumption versus the production model. So I think we'll be able to capture all of those perspectives through the existing scope of work, but we'll certainly, I think, loop back with our team here and see what we can add to just provide clarity right before it goes to the RFP process.
Great, that sounds quite complete, as long as it's in clear wording so that people will understand that. And I think the idea of providing good information for actors to act on out of our plan is, given that's going to be a moving target, it's over years, that having links to that kind of information sounds about as good as we could really hope for. So yeah, good answer. Thank you.
Thank you both. Commissioner Bennett, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you very much. I want to echo the comments that both Commissioner Reed and Commissioner Britton made about the quality of the document. I don't think I could say it as eloquently as they did, but in contrast with Commissioner Britton going at 30,000 feet, I'm going to go much narrower in. For just under the cross-cutting strategies that are on page 48, this is reflects a comment that was a public comment that we could really to look at this plan as a way to really fit climate action into economic development and make it really be part of the economy and drive green growth. So I thought having something about business partnerships or creating economic development opportunities could be listed there also. Unless that's covered by circular economy. If that's part of what's meant by circular economy, then I could leave that out. And I'm seeing that, I noted that as being page 47, but I don't see that, what I'm addressing on page 47. So I'm a little.
It's page 48. Under the additional, it's about mid-page under the additional cross-cutting strategies.
Yes.
And there are a couple references to just transitions and again, the circular economy, small businesses, but per Commissioner Reed's comment, we'll add a different business context as well. I do think it makes sense to add economic development opportunities along with circular economy, because circular economy doesn't necessarily represent the framing of expanding economic opportunity. It's about capturing, it's about ensuring that the economy that's in place is operating in a way that has outputs of the system going back into the system, really reducing waste through the economic engine of the county. And obviously, as the county is a agricultural heavy economy, that is going to be part of the context we talk about as well. But I think the economic development angle is a good one to add to this to add that flavor.
Okay, thank you for that. And then just one other comment is for page 49, where it's talking about things to cover for adaptation. And a couple of things to add, I think, are thinking really about the most vulnerable people, like people on the streets, people who are there's looking at financial impacts for people who I'm imagining are going to see their energy bills going up and their cooling bills going up, and being able to deal with the financial impacts that this will make on people of very low incomes. And also just alternative energy, like I don't know if we want to include this or not, but up here in Capay Valley, people have been very concerned that in the last few weeks, we've had at least 6 power shutoffs that have been extended amounts of time. And people are really wanting to look at things like community networks and being able to be self-sufficient community-wise if possible. So I think there's getting to be more appetite for that. And I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Bennett. Commissioner Dattel.
Thank you very much. And again, I'll echo the other voices that say this is really an interesting and rich and creative document. So it'll be really fun to see how those slick professionals respond to the Yolo County way. I kind of want to echo what Commissioner Bennett just said. The word labor does not appear anywhere in this document. And I think it's important that we not just talk to the business owners, and the property owners, but we have labor represented here. Farm workers are mentioned as an important, component of the labor force, but nobody else is mentioned. So I'm not sure exactly where this is going to fit, but probably around the areas that Commissioner Bennett was just pointing to. So I would like to see that appear somewhere here, related to the other kind of broad economic considerations, because the just transition to a significant extent is going to be about the secondary impacts of climate change, which are in fact our engagement with fixing that and how that's going to cost, people their jobs and so on. And I know that's a really serious consideration for a lot of our political leaders in Yolo County. So I would like to see that appear somewhere in the document. Thanks.
Thank you for that. I know that Kristen and Sarah or Kristen and Julie are going to talk a little bit about this in the equity and engagement strategy as well. But there's a little bit of a marrying of the equity engagement strategy and the scope of work that needs to occur following this meeting. And that'll be something that we'll be discussing. So thank you for that comment. Commissioner Allman.
Before Commissioner Ullman takes the floor, I just want to acknowledge that Supervisor Provenza has to be excused because he has another meeting to attend, and Supervisor Seller is in there as well. Commissioner Ullman, you have the floor.
Yeah, I have a quick question here. It pertains to, just as an example, and again, I echo the comments of the other commissioners about the work you've done. I think it's exemplary. My question is pertaining to trans-jurisdictional impacts, climate-related impacts, GHG-related impacts of agricultural products, specifically their transportation and refinement and packaging and preparation, product development, that sort of thing. We have an example of that here in Woodland with the cannery. Processes local tomato products. Its location is considered to be advantageous, but at the same time, it's a major greenhouse gas emitter. So my question is, how would that be reconciled? Are we going to look at the greenhouse gas inventories of municipalities within the county? Is that pertinent? Or how do we address those kinds of issues that seem to straddle the jurisdictional boundaries?
That is a great question. This is dealt with in different ways in different communities, and this is been part of our interview questions as we've been out interviewing other counties that have been working with their jurisdictions as well. Most of the time, particularly on transportation emissions, you calculate origin and destination as those trips that start and end within that jurisdiction are what that jurisdiction owns. But there's also an acknowledgement there's a lot of pass-through emissions. So vehicle trips that are going on, for example, highways like I-80 or I-5 or any other of the major roadways that are connectors across the county. The county may not be responsible for those vehicle trips and those emissions from those vehicles, but it is part of the background understanding and the context. And this is part of why the county coordinated with all the other jurisdictions to do a regional greenhouse gas inventory to better understand the flow of goods, the flow of traffic, the flow of emissions throughout the county. So it's part of the background dynamic of the Climate Action Adaptation Plan. But unfortunately, the county doesn't really have authority to help influence any of those other jurisdictions. That being said, this the focus on getting to carbon negative requires thinking far beyond what just the county has authority around. And it also has to think about partnerships and coordinating across those other jurisdictions on shared priorities and aligning priorities. So that is part of the background and understanding here. Part of the regional initiatives section of the scope of work talks about the need to incorporate that context and also to think about how to align some of these priority initiatives. And I know staff from the county is really thinking about this strongly as the Climate Action Adaptation Plan moves forward, is how to best engage those other jurisdictions in coordination with this work product. Also knowing that there's a number of other climate action plans in process right now. They're in various different states of development or adoption. And we can tier from those to really build out some aligning strategies across the county and potentially across the region. Like we've heard with Sacramento County, they're very interested in working with us on particularly the more rural focused policies. And if we can have policies that align across multiple jurisdictions, we can do joint grant applications, we can do joint program development and do cost sharing on operating those programs. So there's a lot to be discussed moving forward, but in order to go carbon neutral and carbon negative after 2030, it's going to require an all hands on deck across the county. And so this scope of work acknowledges that, but also acknowledges that the county only has the ability to mandate things within its geography.
So I have another quick follow-up here, and that is in your survey of other counties, for example, did you find any others who had posited carbon negativity as a goal, and by what would they, if you did, what are the timeframes?
No. Carbon negative is something that we don't see very often. There are a few counties in other parts of the country that have that goal, but they are early in the process. There's some cities that have that objective, but they have very different levers they can pull around how to reduce emissions significantly in that amount of time. So we are a bit of a test case on how we can robustly and ambitiously reduce emissions and really show the way, show the path for other counties on how to do this in a equitable and resilient way that really benefits all of our communities.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Just as a quick reminder, sometimes we get some background noise, so if you're not speaking, please remember to mute your mic. That might help. Do we have any additional comment or feedback on this topic before we open the floor to public comments? Commissioner Britton.
Yeah, just a quick little follow-up on that. I think if you asked a random citizen of the county that we were trying to make the county carbon negative, would that include the cities? And everyone would say, well, of course, the cities are in the county. So whether or not technically the county has the power to do that, I think our success or failure as seen by citizenry is going to depend really hugely on how well we can work with the cities, literally twist their arms in anything we can do, because without them, we fail. And so I think the way you phrased it, Michael, was very good. It's an all hands on deck moment. I'm a sailor, yes, but the county has to sort of take the role of the captain here, and bring the hands on deck and in whatever way we can. So that's just my little comment, and I think we can do that.
Thank you, Ken. Commissioner Ullman.
Yes, let me say I endorse that opinion wholeheartedly. I think that's really puts the emphasis where it needs to be in terms of interjurisdictional cooperation. I think it's absolutely essential. Thanks.
And I'm adding my voice also and enthusiastic support to that comment, but I also do want to acknowledge that it requires some energy and level, because we have more than one entity now being focused on doing this work. And but I believe that it is possible. So I am opening the floor to public comments. Members of the public, I think Scott Stewart is the first person to react. Scott, you have the floor and you have about 3 minutes to share your feedback. Thank you. And please, yeah, no, you're good. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I've unmuted. Thank you. I appreciate that, Chair. And what I'm just wanted to make 2 comments. One is that it would be, in my observation, helpful to be very clear about who's going to be making the determination as to which of these proposals are acceptable to the Commission's consideration. And I would encourage that this be an opportunity to reach out to the community who might be join a pair or 3 of the commissioners to wade through the proposals. So a working group might be a good time. The second thing is in determining carbon negative status, at least in terms of production, if we're not going to use scope 3 or touch upon scope 3 inputs and outputs, then I think that needs to be made really clear, because the operational definition of carbon negativity, that goal needs to be really clear for the purpose of progress here. And those are my 2 comments.
Thank you very much, Scott, for this feedback. Do we have any additional comment from the public? Okay, so Scott, you have your hand raised again for the second time. Okay, looks like that was a mistake. So I don't see any additional public comment. So commissioners, are you ready to approve the climate action and adaptation plan scope of work outline as it was presented? If you are suggesting amendments, please state it very clearly. Do we have someone who is making a motion? So I feel called out on that. So Commissioner
I
Bennett.
move that we approve it.
Thank
Approve
you.
the scope of work as presented by the staff.
Thank you. So that was Commissioner Reed. Do we have a second?
Yes, I'll second that. This is Mark.
Commissioner Ullman seconded the motion. Kristen, we already took public comments and I think we're ready to vote on the item.
I have a question about the motion.
Yes, Commissioner.
Ask it.
Yes, of course.
So the motion was as stated by staff, but to clarify if we have amendments, but there were a lot of suggestions made as we went through and discussed. So does the motion mean that we're approving it without consideration of those comments, or that the staff did acknowledge that they thought that several of them had merit and we'll probably follow through on them? I'm just not quite certain what we're
Thank Thank you, Commissioner Bennett. It's an excellent question. I'll let Michael answer it, but I want to clarify, as always, when we're making a motion, we need to state the motion as we want it approved. So we are going to need a short summary of the suggestions that were made. And Michael, I see that you're ready to jump in.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm happy to read off a summary of the changes that were requested as I recorded them, and if there's any clarifications on those, happy to take that if that is acceptable to the chair.
Thank you. Please go ahead.
Okay, so there are a number of different requested changes to the scope of work, and as I recorded them, they're as follows. Bringing the title of the resolution forward into the first section to highlight the inclusive part of the narrative. Add businesses to section 3I of the principles. Section 3.2 of principles, take out the quote unquote elements of. Section 3.5, replace creativity with equity. Section 3.6, highlight achievable. Check section 3.7, change acknowledges with reflects. And then under task 1.1C, add building management and large businesses. Under some of the comments on the RFP evaluation committee, captured comments regarding the deliberative process staff is currently having. So that's not a physical, actual change to the scope of work. Adding clarity around the production versus consumption per public comment, adding a brief clarification around carbon negative and its context to scope 3 emissions. Adding economic development to a narrative of circular economy. And then section 422 or task 422, add a component dealing with increased costs associated with utility bills, energy, and resources, resource consumption, and some additional clarifying comments there. Another comment to add labor or discuss labor in context to the equity engagement strategy. And then the need to provide clarity around decision-making on proposals, and that'll be included in the RFP document that is released publicly. Did I miss anything substantively?
Was there going to be
Thank you, Michael. Oops, sorry, Ken, go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah, that was, I think, very complete. I just wasn't sure where, because it was a pretty general comment, where the talk of working with jurisdictions to achieve the ambitious goal would appear. And I'm not even sure where it should, but that was a discussion that we had.
So I'm going to jump in on that. I think that that talk is a general guideline. What I mean by that is that it's a point that has been made throughout several of the items that we discussed tonight. Again, the importance of working with several jurisdictions. So I think that it can appear in the final language, but I'm stating just for the sake of public record that I think it's a general guideline that this commission wants to uphold. And so I think, Michael, I see that you still have your hand raised. So if you have something to say, let me know now. Okay, so before we restate the motion, I would like to ask the commissioners if you feel that you're ready to vote, that we approve this agenda item, that we approve the CCAP scope of work outline with the suggested changes. So are you ready to vote on that with the suggestions that were made, or do you need more time? And again, as a reminder, this commission has been absolutely incredibly efficient when it comes to moving in a very timely way in regard to the work we want to do. But I'm asking you that because there have been several suggestions made. Michael did an amazing job at keeping track and keeping record. So before I once again ask for a motion, do you feel ready to vote on that?
I believe we have a motion already on the floor that will either need to be amended or withdrawn before we can have a new motion.
So I do not see any objections. So I'm going to ask that we proceed with voting on this motion with all of the suggestions that were listed. And Kristen, we're ready for you. Thank you.
So as it was my motion, then I thank Commissioner Bennett for raising the issue and Michael for taking such copious, detailed and accurate notes, and hereby incorporate those notes into my motion to approve the COP, the scope of work as presented, discussed, and amended by the commission.
Thank you, Commissioner Reed.
I will second that.
Commissioner Britton is seconding the motion. We're ready to vote.
Excellent. Thanks everybody for clarifying. So starting with Commissioner Reed.
Aye.
Commissioner Dottle.
Aye.
Commissioner Allman.
Aye.
Chair Mbondo.
Aye.
Commissioner Austin.
Aye.
Commissioner Alvarez.
Aye.
Commissioner Bennett.
Aye.
And Commissioner Britton.
Aye.
So this motion passes unanimously in account of all the commissioners present. Thank you all. Before we move forward with the next agenda item, we have about 15 minutes left on our meeting. Agenda item number 10 is receiving updates and providing input on climate action and sustainability communication plan. Julia, so we only have 15 minutes left, and we estimated that it might take us about possibly 30 minutes to hear your presentation and discuss this. So I want to ask you and fellow staff, fellow commissioners and staff, how you feel about moving forward. The question is, shall we go over this agenda item, or is there a need to postpone it to next month's meeting? You all have the floor, so please raise your hand and provide feedback. And Julia, I'm going to start with you. Please let us know your opinion on this. I don't want you to feel rushed, though you are.
Thank you, NJ. And I just wanted to formally introduce myself. It's been a while, so it's nice to see everyone. In case I haven't introduced myself, my name is Julia Olson, and I'm the Civic Spark Fellow that's been working with the county. I think the presentation is pretty brief, but I would really appreciate feedback. So I don't want to cut that conversation short. So I think I will look to Kristen on this one because I would really appreciate commission member feedback on this presentation.
So this is my suggestion, Kristen, before you jump in. I would suggest, and Julia, let us know if you're comfortable with that. I will ask that we devote about 10 minutes to this topic, if it's agreeable to commissioners and everyone. So at least we hear, we get an overview and we hear what you want to share with us. And then I'm thinking that we can provide feedback, and if we need more time, if it's okay with everyone, maybe revisit it at next month's meeting, because I know that at least one commissioner has a time constraint, so has to log off by 6:30. So is that, Kristen, what do you think? And does anyone have any objection to the plan that I just proposed?
Can I ask a point of process for Taro? If I think I agree, I would love to give Julia the chance to give this presentation now. If it would be possible, if we run out of time, for folks to provide written feedback to Julia before the next meeting, so that she's able to move forward with updates on some of this process. Is that a possible ask, Taro?
No. So just to be direct on the answer, I think what could happen if we are pressed for time, Julia could give her presentation, and then the commission could vote to postpone the discussion to the next meeting so that it is done in the public setting. and provide the feedback then, or simply move the item to the next meeting and Julia could do her presentation. I know that Julia is interested in receiving the feedback so that she can continue moving forward. But I also understand it's been already a long meeting, and so we're really here at the will of the commission with respect to this item.
So thank you. I'm going to use my privilege as chair to make a request to my fellow commissioner. I will ask you, for those of you who can, if you will please consider staying for an additional 10 minutes. And this is what's going to happen. We're inviting Julia to, of course, share her presentation. But with the understanding that if we need more time, we are going to discuss this topic again next month and provide additional feedback. But what she's about to share has a lot to do with outreach, and it's also in response to several private communications we've received from members of the public in regards to more transparency when it comes to the work of the commission and communication between the counties, Climate Action Commission and the public at large. So quick question, is everyone okay? No, I'm gonna rephrase that. Does anyone have any objection if we extend this meeting by 10 minutes? Okay, I don't see any objection. Julia, you have the floor. We're listening to you. Thank you.
Thank you, NJ. And I just wanted to thank everyone for your time and for listening to what I'm about to present tonight. If we could just get the slides going, I will go ahead. Thank you, Kristen. And start. So I'm going to be talking to you, the commission tonight, about the climate action and sustainability communication strategies. These include a website, social media, and newsletter update. These were all identified as areas for improvement to start building that future engagement around the CAP. Our goal is to build a strong and consistent online presence for climate action and sustainability initiatives. And we're hoping this online presence will serve as a foundation for outreach and engagement efforts, including the equity engagement strategy to guide future CAP outreach. You can go ahead to the next slide, Kristen. At the April commission meeting, county staff shared that we would begin updating the website and developing a communications plan to include new streams of outreach like social media. We identified gaps within the current communications streams, such as while the county does have a sustainability webpage with commission information and some climate action resources and information about the climate compact, a lot of that information is outdated and incomplete. And we identified it not being as clear of a central hub for all countywide sustainability efforts, which is what we'd like to see. Yolo County Sustainability does not have a social media presence or a newsletter. So we decided that communications need to be updated and centralized prior to starting that CAP outreach. And next slide, please. So the first task we identified was redesigning the Yolo County Sustainability website. We created a detailed outline with features that will guide this redesign, which we're hoping to complete within the next month, with the goal of having the website easier to navigate from a viewer perspective and easier to share sustainability and CAP progress and information. The redesign will include interactive areas of the website, such as an email sign up for a newsletter, links to feedback surveys and opportunities for resource sharing, as well as links to social media sites. The website currently includes a translation feature, but we are looking to update it to be even more inclusive. And the long-term goal of the website is to develop interactive tools to track more interactive tools, I should say, to track greenhouse gas reductions emissions and include GIS data, which I know has been a comment from several commission members. And we're looking at completing this part of the website redesign with a consultant. Okay, and this is a brief snapshot of the sustainability website outline. The full outline is in the commission packet, but we wanted to have more of a centralized hub for outreach, as I mentioned, with a main landing page, information about the 2021 sustainability plan, information about the climate action and adaptation plan, information about the commission itself, the compact, and then other county-wide sustainability initiatives and resources. And our second task to do this was to create a social media presence. We're looking at creating a climate action and sustainability Facebook and Instagram. These will be shared on the county website. And the Civic Spark Fellow will be the one monitoring these social media accounts. And they will solicit comment from fellow commission members. The Facebook page will engage with partners across the county by resharing and reposting content. And on all of these social media pages, we will have links to go to redirect viewers to the website for more information. So we are working on that, and that we hope to have done by September, I believe. Okay, and the third task was to develop a newsletter. The intention is to share sustainability and CAP updates with more members of the public, to include information like events, social media, contact information, all of the above. We are hoping to have this be a monthly newsletter sent out on the second Friday of the month. And the Civic Spark Fellow will also be responsible for drafting this content and sharing the newsletter. We will feature a sign up on the website, but we'll also share this link on the other social media platforms as well, such as the Facebook and Instagram page. And for the next steps for this process in July, we are planning on drafting content for the website and to begin the website redesign. And I know it says, oh yeah, we're hoping to finalize the communications plan also in July. Then in August, we are looking at launching that new climate action and sustainability website with all the changes that are featured in the outline, and also launching the first sustainability newsletter, which is great timing with the RFP being released hopefully around then. So that will be really exciting. And then September and on, launching the social media pages around the same time for the working group launch. And then October and beyond, we will continue to work with the consultant to make enhancement to the website and include further tracking tools. Okay. So a few questions for the commission. We wanted to know if there were other features and content areas you would like to see, if there are other, and I guess we could just leave this slide up or pause for that discussion. The other questions being about if there are other social media accounts that you're not seeing that you would like to have us develop, and if there are other content areas and resources you would like to see shared in the newsletter, knowing that the Civic Spark Fellow will be soliciting feedback from commission members. And I'll just wrap up. That concludes my presentation, so we can just jump right into the discussion. And I just wanted to thank you all again for listening, and I'm looking forward to getting your feedback.
Julia, I want to thank you for and all, related staff to this, just for the amount of work and processing that went into this. I'm very excited about everything you presented. Also, this was made with input from the public and from several commissioners. And this is just a very exciting prospect to me. Commissioner Britton, you have the floor. And at some point I think we received a comment that I will read out loud at some point. Just as a reminder, we reserve the chat for exceptional circumstances such as audio difficulty or someone having to leave. And this is because we have to keep this meeting as transparent as possible in terms of communication. Thank you, Commissioner Bennett. Britton.
Yeah, thank you. That was really good, Julia. I like the ideas, every one of them. It's very integrated, very clear. I think it's going to work really well. Just one question, broad question, and I think it's right for you, is that how do we get more young people reached by this outreach? And I was just wondering whether you think Facebook and Instagram are enough. Is TikTok maybe going to be an option that would get more young people? Do we need to go into schools? Because the youth have more skin in the game than us old folks. I just do Facebook and nothing else, so I don't even know what's out there. But I think really targeting young people would be important. So anyway, great job. Thank you.
Ken, I'm excited about what you just shared. And before Julia responds, I want to just throw this out there for staff and for our supervisors when they will be all caught up with our meeting. When it comes to involving the youth, I want to encourage us as a group to think about internship opportunities. Either that or some kind of credits that whichever youth is involved will have. And what I mean by that, I'm thinking of maybe high school students, definitely communication students or ecology students from, local universities and community colleges. But my point is, again, to also be true to one of the values that we have as a commission when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion, in recognizing the work that they do and any labor that is involved in this. So we don't need to address this now and we don't have the time, but I'm hoping that moving forward, we also keep in mind how people who donate their time to advancing this work can, be compensated or also have some benefits when it comes to that. Last thing to add when it comes to TikTok, and everyone knows that time is of the essence. Any attention span in general, or all across the board, has been shorter and shorter. So just something to keep in mind. Julia, did you want to react to Commissioner Britton's comment?
I thank you for the feedback. I really appreciate it. I think the more platforms, the better. I think it comes down to looking at capacity and how we can maintain that. I think what that touches on what NJ was saying about involving more students or intern positions to help with that work. I think that would be a really great fit for, including more of those social media platforms. So thank you.
And I want to echo something that was, I want to acknowledge that Bennett, Commissioner Austin has to leave. And maybe already left, but again, thanking Commissioner Austin for her contribution tonight. Another thing that I wanted to echo, just because it was already mentioned during this meeting, was something about not reinventing the wheel and being aware that in our communities throughout Yolo County and beyond, I really enjoying your cat's tail, Julia, but that we have climate activist youth groups that are already doing a lot on social media, and some of them also have content that is very educational and that can be complementary to the work that we do. So we could be joining forces with some of these youth groups. And again, this is just food for thought. Commissioner Reid, you have the floor.
Thank you. And thank you, Julia, for this good work. And I do have a few comments. This happens to be one of my pet peeves. So bear with me. First of all, I think your timeline may be a little overly ambitious. because it takes a lot of work to do the kinds of things that you want to do. The website is in my personal view, it is not navigable. And what happens when you have an unnavigable website is that people come to visit it, and if they can't find what they're looking for, then they leave and they never come back. So when we're ready to launch, I think we need to have something that we know it's going to hit the mark and that people are going to be able to use it. And also in that light, it's also important that when we have a website that we beta test it with various of our target audiences to make sure that they've had an opportunity to go through it and see if it speaks to them, because it's very difficult for one person to set forth a framework that is accessible to all. And I think it's especially important that some of our minority and vulnerable community have a look at the website before we launch it, recognizing that digital access remains an issue for those communities. One of the elements that I've had a lot of trouble with on these websites, and it's not just Yolo County, it's almost every municipal website that I visit, is the search. And the search capacity in our website pulls up really out-of-date documents and old documents. I mean, if you look at the Climate Compact and you try to put that into the search, you're going to come up with minutes that were written in 2009, and there have been no updates since that time. So you're going to have some work to do to go through the linkages that already exist for some of these, and I would suggest you use the search capacity to do that and see what comes up. The first thing I would suggest is that we just take the old documents off because they don't come up in sequence, in the correct sequence, and so somebody may be looking at an old document when in fact there's a new document that replaces it, but it's absolutely probably in another location. So it's very tricky, but it's really something that needs to be done if we are serious about having the public, giving the public the kind of transparency and access to information that we care to provide. I take a look at the keywords and what they bring up, because you have to sort of know the magic trick to find what you're looking for. And so we need to be looking at vocabulary and not have people have to try to play, guess the right word in order to find the information that they want. That warrants a discussion among some of our target audiences, just to understand how people who are not as informed as this staff and these commissioners are refer to things in a way that was just like hashtags. It's like, what can we say that's meaningful to somebody from the outside that's not an expert in this field that'll help them find the information that they need? So that's another conversation. I mentioned the cleansing that I think needs to be done for a lot of the documentation. The other thing is the links. There's a lot of overlap within the county organizations and within the county commissions. And so rather than try to incorporate everything, you have to be really careful about the links to the other organizations with which we either affiliate or that are actually a part of the county. And some of these, an example that I would use is the Fire Safe Council, which is also launching an effort to redo its website. And to talk about fire, what has wildfires, wildfire prevention, wildfire preparation, wildfire response, and emergency evacuation, and what to do after a wildfire and you've been impacted by it. So we need to try to walk through the steps of what people are, what they're going through. But also provide the information that they need. Wildfire is a big component of climate action. We haven't talked about how we're going to incorporate wildfire and forest management into the climate action plan. Again, we don't want to reinvent the wheel, but if we decide that we are going to defer to another organization that is taking the wheel, then we need to link to it and make sure that we have the appropriate worded so that people know that the information there is accessible to them and that it's complete. So far, the county has handled wildfire preparation in segments. I know I sit on the Yolo Adult and Adult Aging and Adult Services Commission. They in particular focused on wildfire prevention, preparation, et cetera, as it reflects or as it applies to the aging community and people with disabilities. So they have a whole section that applies to those people. But in fact, a lot of these are generic, you know, preparing and responding. And so we need to not silo the information according to target audience, but to collect it in a place that everybody can find it in one place. So that's just another another comment that I would make. There are more organizations than that. Resource conservation districts. We have a lot of commissions. We have a lot of organizations that are affiliated or part of the county that are also doing work that pertains to climate action. And so you're really going to need to make some decisions about how we link with them or how we incorporate their work or reference their websites from our platform. And because I just said all that, I've recommended before, and I think it would be appropriate to recommend now. I think the commission needs a working group on communications and outreach. I think this should be one of their responsibilities, and as well as the outreach and engagement plan that will be developed by the consultant. And that is all I have to say. Thank you.
Commissioner Reid, thank you. And Julia and Kristen, before you react, I just want to acknowledge that it is already 6:40. This is what I suggest. I want to hear also feedback from Commissioner Allman, Commissioner Bennett, and I believe Commissioner Morgan. And I will just, so by law, we cannot continue this meeting if we stop having a quorum. So as long as you can stay present in the meeting, I will let it run. And the moment we stop having a quorum, I will adjourn it. But I think that we can move forward in a reasonable amount of time and hear all the feedback that that is needed right now. So Julia, would you like to react to Commissioner Reid's feedback? Also, excuse me, before we do so, I feel the need to state publicly, again, just as a reminder, that our commission's website is going to be a work in progress throughout the existence of this commission and probably beyond. And I need to state it as to manage expectations, and also because the website will require regular updates, as we're going to need to add, you know, in increments information that pertains to the progress that we've made and the discoveries and so on and so on. So I just felt the need to state that. And also, I'm saying it now before it slips my mind. By the end of the conversation on this topic, I would like to ask my fellow commissioners if you will consider being part of a subcommittee, or you'll be interested in the creation of a subcommittee specifically for the beta testing of the website. And again, keep in mind that the website will be a work in progress. The reason I am suggesting that is because if you, and I know you've had time, I believe you've had time to look at the attachment at Julia's presentation before this meeting. Part of the proposal is a creation of a landing page. So a landing page is a very simple page that has some essential information. I think that it will be reasonable to at least have that out there while we're finalizing the website. Obviously, there's going to be an approval, you know, I'm guessing, I believe, from the commission when it comes to the launch of the website. Let's again keep in mind that the website is not going to be a finished product, that there's going to be updates and upgrades as we are adding information to it. But at some point, I think it would be good to launch a first version of it, knowing that there is more information coming and more being added to it. So let's keep that in mind, and then we'll circle back to the creation of a subcommittee for beta testing. Julia,
I can respond.
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
I appreciate your comment. My ultimate recommendation is let's not put something out there that doesn't work at all. So I agree that this is a work in progress, that some of the work that I described, such as cleansing, can take place in parallel. But what I would do is articulate on the website itself that it is a work in progress and that we are gathering comments from the users as to any difficulties they're having, so that we can gather feedback as we go. But I would say I would eliminate some bells and whistles from the initial launch and come up with something solid as an initial launch, so we don't lose users because they come to the website and nothing there works for them. So that would be my caveat.
I appreciate the clarification, Commissioner Reid. I know we are going to revisit this topic because the landing page is not going to be live without the Commission having a chance to review it publicly, so to speak, like officially live. There will be something worked out on that. And then also we've taken note of your comment. Thank you again so much. That was a very rich feedback. Julia, would you like to react before we hear Commissioner Ullman?
Just in the interest of time, I just wanted to say thank you. I think you brought up really important points, and we will circle back on that. I want to make sure the website is as inclusive and as easy to navigate as possible. So thank you for your feedback, and we will continue to make those changes.
Appreciate it. Also want to voice my support for the suggestion regarding information on wildfires and the listing of the commissions and institutions doing similar work as to YCCAC. Commissioner Ullman, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you, Julia, for this presentation. I find this very encouraging. One of the things that's striking me about this whole process is when I came to this commission, the operative word for me was action, and we're taking action, we're making progress. I think that should be an emphasis of the website right at the top. Traditionally, we would be looking at a wireframe of the website to show what's level 1, level 2, level 3, and on in an attempt to make what can be very complex issues and topics relatively easy to digest and simplified at the upper levels. But if we have time to do that, I don't know. I would suggest a couple of things, and maybe what I'd like to learn more about next month is what kind of search engine optimization mechanisms do you have in mind? I mean, is it keyword based or however? I think interactivity is quite important. I think we want to reach out to our population and say what your opinion matters, your concerns matter. We need to make this website as relevant as possible. I would say contemporary, relevant, and as deep as needed, without overdoing it up at the higher levels of the website. So with that, I think maybe some click monitoring. I don't know if you have that in mind, but counting clicks on certain topics is one way to do this. And also keep it fresh. I mean, it needs to be, the homepage needs to be refreshed, either graphically or with verbal content or both. I think emphasizing the progress of this commission is one way to go. We also have many other constituencies and communities within Yolo County who are engaged in environmental issues and climate-related issues, and having sidebars pointing people in those directions, I think would be kind of valuable. As well as this is kind of an aggregation site where people, like-minded people who may be siloed now, could come and learn about other activities and other people in the county and what the county itself is doing. So hopefully that isn't too much to digest, but I'm very excited by this prospect, and I think your presentation fills me with a lot of hope. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Ullman. Julia?
Not much of a reaction, just a thank you. And I will look at incorporating all of that feedback. So thank you, Mark, for your feedback.
Great. Commissioner Bennett, you have the floor.
Okay. Yes, thank you very much for this. This is definitely a really needed thing to do, is to tackle the website and the social media. But it does seem to be, heavily online, a little bit maybe for the choir, the people that are already there on climate change. And when we're trying to put so much emphasis on marginalized communities and so forth, I feel like in the statement of work there, in the first deliverable, there's a lot of things about understanding our community and how you reach them and communicate with them and draw them in and engage them. And so I'd like to see this as a comprehensive communication plan that and I also appreciate the need for getting something out there and starting to do things right away. So it's fine to, I think, start, but to make an acknowledgement that this work is going to be coming from the consultant, and that we'll revisit the communication plan when we have all that data on our various constituencies and the best ways to contact them and to try to get them engaged. So that's my first comment. And the second one is on the website itself. Yes, I'm kind of echoing the idea that when people come to it, it needs to be fresh and people need to be engaged. Something that really does say we are doing something, and maybe even gives the idea that if you are concerned and worried about climate change, that, hey, the county is doing something, and here it is, here's what we're doing. And here's the progress we're making in very non-technical ways that you don't have to connect to 20 different documents to try to figure out what's going on. And then finally, that I really like that, really like the idea of the interactive or the dashboard that will tell how each of the projects is contributing. If there is a way to really express that in terms of the difference it makes to people's everyday lives, I know that might be fairly difficult to do, but it's a topic that leaves a lot of people in feeling kind of, what does it have to do with me, when it has everything to do with them. So if we can figure out a way to communicate that and show them how it's going, what each of these projects has done for their everyday lives, it would be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Bennett. Julia, if at some point I see that you unmute yourself, I'll know that you would like the floor. Is that okay? Okay. Commissioner Morgan.
Thank you. And thank you, Julia, for the presentation. I think you've put a lot of thought into it, and yeah, I just appreciate that. I did want to clarify, are we going to be able to see like a mock-up of the design that's being considered for these landing pages? And then echoing what other commissioners have said, certainly beta testing it. I think at the minimum, this whole commission should get the chance to beta test. So that's one question, clarification for you. And then I think, a lot of this conversation, we're talking about the website and social media as one aspect of a greater communications plan. And I would probably agree with Commissioner Reed that that might entail its own subgroup or committee, because I think that's going to be a really important part of how this commission is going to get its work done. And so to that end, just acknowledging that, Julie, you've done a great job, and this is just one aspect of a much broader conversation and plan that this group will be working on. I did want to mention, in terms of trying to engage with youth, TikTok is actually where it's at. I don't really understand it. I'm not that useful, but I think if that's one of our priorities, is engaging with the youth, is maybe see if we can do some cross collaboration with the County Youth Commission, maybe looking into TikTok as a possibility, because at this point it's, the website and then social media, that's where younger people are going to get info. They're not going to be reading newsletters or pamphlets or anything. So so that, again, it's just to emphasize, if we're trying to get youth involvement, I think those are some suggestions. And then one thing I did want to point out is, in tonight's conversation, it came out that Yolo County is one of the very few counties with a carbon negative goal. And I think we should really highlight that on the website, as like, this is a novel thing that Yolo County is doing. And hopefully that it can stir up some excitement and reassure people that we are working on it. So I think it's important to highlight that. That was all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Morgan. It's very important that I let you know that there is a bit of a conflict with some of the feedback we received. So I understand the desire.
It looks like we lost NJ. And so just to quickly touch on that, Sarah, I think it is very much our plan that this will be part of a larger strategy that a working group will work on. So I think this is one piece. We have to figure out the functionality on our end. We do not own the whole website. So I think, we're looking at a portion of the county's overall website that we're trying to edit. And so I think it is definitely our intent that we'll share draft versions of that landing page with you all for review, and we need to look into what beta testing options we might be able to do through the website so that you can all view that, but definitely would like to provide the opportunity for you all to give us input. So valuable. And this is all really helpful for us to take back and think about, okay, and chatting with the county's IT folks about what we might be able to do within the constraints of the county website. And NJ had mentioned that she is trying to get back into the meeting. And so just before she joins, I have a very hard stop in 5 minutes. But Commissioner Bennett, your hand is up, and I'm not sure if your hand is up from before or if you have additional comments.
Sorry.
Okay, thank you.
If we have some dead air, I have a question in addition. I think it's related to the stuff we've been talking about, but to make sure that the website is phone friendly, because I think a lot of especially less digitally connected people in the county, their only interaction will be via phone. And a lot of nice websites go up in flames when you try to see them on a small screen. So it's something to think about.
Tara, while we wait, I do see that we have one hand raised from for public comment as well. Anything else from commission members as feedback, or Tara, if not, are we able to go to public comment?
I believe that what we should do in the absence of the chair and the vice chair is perhaps to have a volunteer of the commission to finish off the meeting. I mean, we could do it, but I'm reluctant to do it because we're not commissioners.
Yeah.
I obviously realize that there apparently isn't any more commission comments, but if someone could step up to finish the meeting, that would be great.
I'd be willing to chair for a few minutes until NJ gets back, or we adjourn.
Thank you, Commissioner Britton. Oh, wait. Oh, there we go.
NJ's back. Hey, I will step down as chair then.
I really apologize for that. My battery died. I'm not gonna keep you on much longer.
NJ?
And I want to acknowledge that Kristen spent some time. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, you might need to turn your camera off. You're breaking up a little bit.
Okay. Yes, I figured. Is that better?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
So.
Recording in progress.
Okay. I'm gonna. Sorry. Okay, there should be no more echo. Okay, I'm gonna keep this brief. Thank you all again for your patience, and apologies for that technical problem. So I wanted to point out a conflict in the feedback that we received so that we keep it in mind moving forward. And so you understand why I made the earlier suggestion. So I understand the desire for the commission as a whole to be able to beta test the website before it is live. But the conflict is that anything that we discuss publicly or as a commission, as a full body, has to be public record. So the moment we beta test the website as a whole group, it's going to be out there on the net live for everyone to see. So if there is something we're not happy with, it's going to have to stay on public record. This is why I suggested that there be a subcommittee made of commissioners who feel like they will provide the most valuable input and are very involved in the final outcome to be a part of. And then knowing that that subcommittee, will have the support of and the trust of the commission as a whole body. And again, keeping in mind that the version that will be live is a version that we will feel comfortable having out there as a starter, and that will keep adding on, and improving. So I just wanted to share that. And Kristen, I know that you have to leave in a couple of minutes, but before we adjourn this meeting, and also for the record, Taro has something to share with us as we adjourn. I would like to ask that we form a subcommittee. Happy to put that to vote. We're going to need a motion. And I will ask staff to let us know the minimum or the maximum amount of members that subcommittee can have. I know there is I don't remember what the number is for this commission that enables us to not break the Brown Act.
Madam Chair, before you continue with that, I believe that there was public comment pending on the item.
Yes, from Christine Shoemaker, if my memory is correct. So Christine, if you can hear us, I said what I had to say. Christine, you have the floor before we go back to discussing or enacting the creation of a subcommittee. Christine, you have the floor. Thank you, Taro.
So thank you. My comments really sort of relate to the broader picture beyond the digital or internet. And so probably more than for just Julia, but I think we have to kind of keep the whole idea of how we're talking to everybody about what we're doing. So like there was no press release or no press that I could see that the Board of Supervisors approved the early action items. And not in the Davis paper or in the Woodland paper. And I think if there's a way we can start making that public, even without the website, that'll be good, because that gets to everybody, even whether you're internet interested or not. And the other suggestion is along those lines, at some point in time, we might have to do things like if we want to bring in communities in Woodland or West Sacramento who are different than Davis, you might have to do things like going to an event in West Sacramento or in Woodland, Tomato Festival, which doesn't exist anymore, but that kind of thing, so that you're getting everybody that happens to be there, not those who are just interested in sustainability. And the other aspect of that would be maybe at some point in time, you go to the different municipalities and say, here's where we are. You request 15 minutes at one of the 4 or 5 council meetings and say, here we are. So thank you for your input. And I really do want to thank Julia. This is a lot of work. And from somebody who finds a lot of stuff online, I'm really happy to see that. Thank you.
Christine, I sincerely really appreciate your comment. And I believe that Commissioner Bennett also touched on that when pointing out that there was an emphasis on online communication in this communication plan. And that is correct. And as a reminder, I don't know if I made that suggestion publicly, but I know I had that conversation with staff. We did discuss other ways of communicating the word of the commission beside that information being online. Again, we want to acknowledge that not everyone has an easy access to information that is online. So I am asking Julia, I thank you again for the tremendous amount of work that you did. And staff as well. And also, I think my suggestion, which include what Christine said and Commissioner Bennett as well, is to expand that presentation at some point for like future reference, to just add also a section for non-online communication plan. I want to point out that I believe that this topic intersects with the creation of an outreach working group as well. I think there is an intersection here. I want to also point out that our commissioners are involved in various groups and at city levels and grassroots level. And that if you're ever invited to give a presentation on the work of YCCAC, please do inform staff. Please consider saying yes if you think you'll have the capacity, because that will really help the work and the cause. And if you haven't been invited, but you're involved and you're aware of commissions doing the same, similar work, climate action plan work in where you live, please ask to be invited to the presentation. And then also farmers markets, having a table at some point, etc., is something that can be considered. Also very quickly, because I'm aware of some radio show hosts having radio shows in Spanish and things like that. It's also, we could have a segment, at some point on those. So this, what I'm saying, is something that can be spread out as we're doing this work. Christine, thank you again. So for the sake of time, I'm asking my fellow commissioners, is there any opposition to, I think we need a motion for that, Taro, to, enact or the creation of a subcommittee for beta testing of the website?
So, Madam, this would be my recommendation at this point. I mean, because we haven't agendized the creation of a committee, this was the receive the presentation and provide feedback. It might be best to postpone that thought. We can bring it back at the next meeting as a follow-up item on this. It was a presentation. We can leave the item open or bring it back as a separate item, as a follow-up item to this particular item. I think that would probably be the best course.
Okay, and Taro, I want to thank you for this reality check, because I did mention that we will place this agenda item again on the agenda at the next meeting, so we can further discuss it and take any necessary action. So I'm going to hold my horses for now, even though I'm super excited and I want to move forward. Okay. So we have received public comments. I don't see any other reactions from commissioners. I suggest that we close this agenda item. And Julia, I'm thanking you very much again for this presentation. Very briefly, do we have any commission members' comments, reports, anything you would like to share before we mention the long-range calendar and before we adjourn the meeting? Commissioner
I just had
Reid.
a question.
Yeah, Commissioner Reid.
To understand what's happening with this item. Are we holding this item open for the next meeting and also agendizing the creation of a communications and outreach subcommittee or work group?
Thank you for asking. So we are placing this item on next month's agenda again, but this time with an action item. A non-action item, which will be, the creation of a subcommittee for the beta testing of the website.
So the agenda item will include an action item?
Yes, and that will be the creation of a subcommittee for beta testing and further discussion regarding, how to make sure that what is being put out there will be agreeable to all the commissioners and be done properly.
Super, thank you for the clarification.
To follow up, do you think this should be a working group or a subcommittee? Those are importantly different. And I was thinking a working group might be good to bring in the community.
To follow up Commissioner Britton, I think there should be both, and I'll explain why. I think that there is something about the timeline of the creation of a working group. And I mentioned that we at various times discussed that we are going to need a working group that focuses on outreach. And I mentioned that I believe that what we discussed tonight on this agenda item fall within that scope. But then next month, we can discuss if you want a working group specifically just on online presence. But it's my personal opinion that we should look at outreach as a whole and be able to keep everything connected. And then secondly, I strongly also advocate for the creation of a subcommittee specifically for beta testing and just focus on beta testing. And the advantage if we do that is that it will happen quickly. It can be decided at the end of next month's meeting, and commissioners who are interested will be able to declare that they want to be part of that group, and that group will be able to meet within weeks and to start working with Julia and appropriate staff on that. I hope I answered your question. Okay, Commissioner Reed. You're muted.
I guess I'm confused about between what a subcommittee is and what a working group is and what the difference is, because my biggest concern is what you were saying about the continuity and integration of an alignment between a website, our social media presence, a newsletter, and an outreach program. So it's not making sense to me that I don't want to prolong the meeting, but it's just not making sense to me that we would have two different things when that probably would have the same people on them. That's
yes, I am happy to address that.
We can discuss it at the next meeting if that's when the agenda item is taken up. Thank you.
Yes, we will discuss it at the next meeting, but I need to point out that when the commissioners mentioned the desire for the whole commission to beta test the website, when we do that, we do have some public inputs. But the difference with the working group is be able to dedicate hours at a time as commissioners and members of the public on the specific item. So the beta testing, the idea was that we'd be able to have a pre-approval from commissioners on, of something that is going to come before the commission and then be enacted and implemented. But like you said, we're going to be able to further discuss that next month. And be able to define and decide as a group how we want to move forward on that. Okay, thank you. So I believe that this effectively concludes our discussion on this agenda item. So I will ask Taro if you have the long range calendar to just put it on screen, just for the record. It is not something that we need to discuss. If you can, if not, it's in the.
If I knew how to, I would be happy to.
Okay, it's okay. I'm just going to mention that it's attachment M. And with that, we are ready to adjourn the meeting. But Taro, you have an announcement that you'd like to share with us at this point.
I did, and thank you, Madam Chair. It's actually sad news, and I didn't want to begin the meeting with sad news, but there was a comment made earlier about Matt Earhart at the Yolo Solano district, who has been extremely helpful. He is in our Transportation Advisory Committee. Unfortunately, he passed away yesterday in a fatal accident in Sacramento, and just wanted to make the commission aware of that. And again, I didn't want to make a mention before. We didn't want to start the meeting in a negative note, but I just wanted to acknowledge that.
Would you please state his name again for
Matt Earhart.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
I understand there was a speeding car that hit him in Sacramento. So
well, having had recent contact with Matt, that is absolutely tragic.
I agree.
Yeah.
Thanks for letting us know, Tara. I'm going to send a card.
Thank you. So if I may, on behalf of our commission and everyone present in this meeting, I just want to extend our sincere condolences to his family and all of his loved ones.
And I should also mention that it was Supervisor Provenza who asked me to make these comments as well.
Okay.
But he obviously could not stay to the end of the meeting.
Yes. Okay, this is definitely sad news and sad day. We've lost an incredible member of our community. Thank you for sharing. So commissioners and staff and members of the public, we are going to adjourn this meeting. It is 7:12 p.m. I thank you all again for your attendance, contribution, very, very important feedback. And again, there is going to be a record of this meeting available very soon. And I look forward to resuming our conversation and further advancing our work together. You've all been absolutely amazing. And again, I cannot thank you all enough for all the feedback you're providing and the points that you're raising. I hope we all have a good week, and please, let's all try to stay cool as well, and see you next month.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening.
Yes, thank you.